Chapter 472. Apple vinegar was successfully killed by Gu Fei, and to Gu Fei, he was still the target of his daily quest. Gu Fei did not know what punishment he would receive after killing him. Would he go to jail? Who knew how long that would take? Giordano had given Gu Fei a lot of information, listing all of apple vinegar's PK crimes, but there was no mention of his current PK value. If they wanted to put this kid in jail, it would be hard to imagine how they would calculate it. Gu Fei was not in the mood to worry about him. Number 3, who had snuck into the room, was still waiting for him to catch him. Gu Fei rushed to the room that the man had snuck into and pushed the door open. He saw the masked man standing calmly by the window. Gu Fei hurriedly steadied himself and did not rush forward. The person was so calm. Was there a trap here? Gu Fei held the door with one hand to keep it open, his eyes searching the room. Guards. There were many guards in this room, but this was nothing surprising. Guards were the most frequently seen NPCs in this government office. Other than that, Gu Fei could not see any traps, nor did he feel any hidden killing intent. This made him nervous. A trap that could not be detected was always the scariest. Gu Fei stared at the masked person in front of him, observing his every move to prevent him from playing any tricks. Unfortunately, Gu Fei did not have the ability of number 2. The person was right in front of him, but he could not tell who it was just by looking at the figure. Then again, even if the person took off the mask, he would still not know that he did not know number 3. What made Gu Fei feel even more uneasy was the aura of the person in front of him. That confident look on his face did not seem like he was faking it. He must have some sort of plan. Gu Fei became more alert as he thought about it. However, he did not make the first move. He was afraid that if he made the first move, it would be the result that the other party wanted. In this game, it was not about equipment or skills, but intelligence. The air around them was unusually tense. At least, that was what Gu Fei felt. After a long stalemate, Gu Fei glanced at the time. Fuck, only a minute had passed. However, he had already made up his mind to strike after the enemy had struck. He continued to stand still. In terms of patience, Gu Fei was confident that he would not lose to anyone. However, in just 1 minute, the opponent's situation seemed to have changed. He seemed to have lost his composure. This made Gu Fei a little disappointed. An opponent who seemed to be very shrewd showed signs of defeat in less than a minute. This made Gu Fei feel that he was not playing a game, but playing with loneliness. The other party's gaze turned from impatient to doubtful as he looked at the group of guards around him. What's so special about these guards? Gu Fei followed his gaze as he slowly walked into the room and closed the door behind him. The guard did not react to Gu Fei's actions. Just like any other guard, he stood there obediently and played his role. Gu Fei could not understand what was so suspicious about these guards that the guard would stare at him like this. The first to completely lose his patience and break the silence was the other party. He said, "Why is it like this?" Another question that he did not understand. Gu Fei subconsciously wanted to say that he should ask if there was anything he did not understand. This was an illness. A teacher's job was to teach and dispel doubts. Why? Shouldn't your PK value be 20? The other continued. Gu Fei was completely relieved when he heard this. No wonder the other party would make such a suicidal move. No wonder he would have the confidence to win after seeking his own death. As expected, the other party was not playing a game, but a game of wits. He had noticed from the beginning that Gu Fei had increased his PK value to 20 in order to help number 2 enter the government office. He must have calculated the time and expected that Gu Fei would only act openly in front of the guards after washing away some of his PK value. He hid in this room first because he saw apple vinegar preparing to ambush Gu Fei at the bottom of the stairs. He concluded that Gu Fei would increase his PK value after killing his opponent. Then, he would immediately be killed by the guards inside the room. A deliberate but undetectable trap. This made Gu Fei secretly think that it was a close call because he had indeed neglected to calculate the PK value. Fortunately, he was lucky. He had a wanted mission with apple vinegar. This was the only way to kill someone without counting his PK value. If not for this. Gu Fei looked at the group of guards in front of him, his heart pounding. Apart from that, Gu Fei also noticed a detail. He looked at the person in front of him and asked, "Who are you?" The other party did not answer. This person knew him. Gu Fei had such a bold guess in his heart. After seeing that apple vinegar was about to attack him, he did not even look at the outcome of the duel. He resolutely ran into the room and waited for Gu Fei, whose PK value had increased to 20, to come in and be taken down by the guards. The other party might not have noticed this detail. When he saw that Gu Fei was about to fight, he immediately thought that Gu Fei wanted to increase his PK value. This kind of judgment was definitely made by someone who knew Gu Fei. The silence gave Gu Fei the choice to attack. Since they knew each other, all he had to do was remove the mask on his face. With this thought, Gu Fei shot forward. The room was not big, and the door was guarded by Gu Fei behind him. There was no way he could escape. That was what Gu Fei was thinking. Who would have thought that the other party would do something he didn't expect? The man turned around and pushed open the window behind him, then jumped out. Fuck. So determined. Gu Fei cursed. He did not expect that the person would rather die than let him know who he was. Did he really need to hide his identity? At this time, the height of the floor was even higher than the courtyard's walls. Falling down would mean certain death. Even if he did not die, the players below would not give him any chance of survival. Gu Fei rushed to the window, but found that he was wrong again. The person flew out of the window but did not fall straight to the ground. After falling one floor, the person's feet kicked off somewhere and suddenly leaped up. With one kick, the person broke open a window on the lower floor and flew in just like that. Gu Fei was stunned. He could not see the person's figure, but how could he not see the Grandmaster of Combat's skill? Swallow Slash, this was clearly the Grandmaster of Combat's Swallow Slash. This could not help but surprise Gu Fei. Because he clearly saw the chain of fireballs being fired before chasing here, but the person in front of him was a Grandmaster of Combat. Then where did the magician go? Did he chase the wrong person? Time did not allow Gu Fei to think. He quickly rushed out of the room and rushed to the next floor, hoping to catch up to the person's figure again. But as soon as he stepped out of the door, he was met with an ice whirlwind. This time, Gu Fei could not avoid it at all, and he took it head-on. The damage from being hit by the ice whirlwind was secondary, the fatal thing was the huge reduction in speed. A gust of wind followed the ice whirlwind, and with his reduced speed, Gu Fei could not avoid it even if he wanted to, so he took the arrow head-on. Gu Fei, who had lost his agility, did not dare to face the enemy, and quickly retreated into the room, slamming the door shut with a wave of his hand. Then he heard a loud bang and a heavy blow on the door, obviously the sound of the opponent's spell exploding on the door, and the sound of the archer's arrow hitting the door. So sneaky. Gu Fei thought. This ice whirlwind could be controlled by the continuous consumption of mana, so the magician outside the door controlled the ice whirlwind to stop at the side of the door, waiting for Gu Fei to step out. This was not something that could be avoided by human strength. And the archer's arrow came at the moment when Gu Fei's speed was reduced, leaving him unable to dodge at all. Their cooperation was perfect, and they were definitely in contact with the Grandmaster of Combat who had led him into the room. A high-damage mage, an archer, and a Grandmaster of Combat who had a tacit understanding of each other. Putting all these together, wasn't it obvious who the other party was? Drifting, left hand wrote love, right hand wrote handsome. After guessing the other party's identity, Gu Fei's thoughts became clearer. The third person who organized this team was the Grandmaster of Combat, left hand wrote love, and the one who led him into this team was the archer, right hand wrote handsome. Gu Fei was a little confused. How did number 6 find out that he had a two-way mission with flowers in the fog? Just from the disturbance in the courtyard? So it seemed that Drifting had arranged for him to wait outside the door, and then deliberately led him into this team. What was his purpose? How did Drifting get into the government office? There were a lot of questions, and Gu Fei couldn't wait to know the answer. He sent a message to Drifting, "What the hell are you doing?" Before he could reply, he heard a bang, and the window of the room was kicked open. The guy who had just jumped out of the building had used swallow slash again. Hello. Left hand, or right hand? Gu Fei only knew these two people, but he couldn't match their names and classes. It's left hand, wrote Love. The guy said as he took off his mask. What the hell are you guys doing? They organized a team, brought them into the government office, and now they seem to be killing them one by one. Gu Fei didn't understand. This. Let's talk about it later. Love left hand suddenly flew up and punched. Obviously, he knew that Gu Fei was still slowed down by the ice whirlwind, and he had to take this opportunity to knock down Gu Fei. Love left hand punched with extreme confidence. As a result, just when he thought he could knock down Gu Fei with one punch, Gu Fei had already stepped to his side, and with a flip of his hand, he slashed at Love left hand's back. Left hand right Love was shocked. Had he already recovered? Impossible, there was no reason for him to be so fast. Love left hand thought about Gu Fei's action just now. It was not fast, but it was accurate. Underestimated me again. Gu Fei shook his head and sighed. Do you think you can beat me in a one-on-one fight by slowing me down? Do you think you're an expert? Butterfly Knot, everyone already knows who number 3 is, so what's their purpose? You'll only know next month. Chapter 473. People of the same trade were enemies. In the game, people of the same profession were enemies. Although there were differences in levels, everyone believed that they were the most skilled in their profession. Writing Love Lefty was being looked down upon by Gu Fei. Although he was being compared to the number 1 Grandmaster of Combat, 100 years of experience, he was still unconvinced. In fact, Gu Fei wasn't concerned about their skill level. What Gu Fei meant was that Love Lefty was just a normal person, not a martial artist like 100 years of experience. So even if Love Lefty used Ice Whirlwind to slow down Gu Fei, it was still more than enough for Gu Fei to take care of him. Of course, this wasn't any better. In short, he was looking down on Love Lefty's ability. Writing Love Lefty was unsatisfied, so he turned around and raised his leg. A normal player who used game skills was like an opponent who only knew a few fixed moves to Gu Fei. How hard could it be to deal with him? Even if Love Lefty had some experience in using his skills, this small change couldn't escape the eyes of a professional like Gu Fei. At this time, writing Love Lefty's leg came flying. Gu Fei saw it clearly, so he tilted his head slightly and the kick missed. Then he lowered his body and grabbed writing Love Lefty's flying right leg with one hand. He extended his other leg and unkindly swept towards writing Love Lefty's other left leg. His left hand's flying kick immediately reached a new height. He flipped backwards and fell flat on his back with a smack. If Gu Fei really wanted to attack, he would have slashed writing Love Lefty's back with a double flame flash. He didn't go all out because he knew writing Love Lefty. He put down writing Love Lefty and didn't continue. He stood up and said, "All right, stop fighting. Tell me what you guys are doing." With a bang, the door was pushed open. The system house's door was open for people to enter and exit. If there wasn't a special arrangement, it wouldn't be locked. Gu Fei blocked a wave of spells and arrows. Now that Drifting and writing Love Lefty also pushed, the door opened. The two rushed in and saw writing Love Lefty lying on the ground. Gu Fei turned around and innocently shrugged. "What are you guys trying to do?" Although he was sandwiched between the three of them, Gu Fei was not afraid at all, because the freeze effect had already passed. It was originally only for a few seconds, and if it continued, it would be too much of a freak. Of course, Drifting knew how long his spell would last. He was sure that right Love Lefty wouldn't have disappeared by the time he cast the spell. But now, he saw right Love Lefty fall to the ground in such a sorry state. Could it be that Lefty had defeated right Love Lefty when he was slowed down by the frozen spell? Drifting gasped. He realized that the stranger wasn't the only one who had underestimated Gu Fei. He thought he knew how strong Gu Fei was, but he was wrong. Was there a limit to his strength? Gu Fei retreated to the wall and stood in a position where he could easily attack any one of the three. Then he smiled and said, "Talk." "Why isn't anyone talking?" Drifting looked at him and said helplessly, "A mission is also a mission." "What mission?" Gu Fei asked. "It's just a normal mission. I can't compare to you." "You actually dared to assassinate Giordano," Drifting said. "But isn't it despicable to purposely use so many people as cannon fodder?" Gu Fei said. He always had a good impression of Drifting. Now that he thought of Drifting doing such a thing, he couldn't help but feel sorry for him. Drifting shrugged indifferently and said, "I think you misunderstood me. I've never been a good person." "Yes, it's a misunderstanding." Gu Fei nodded. He felt a little sorry for Drifting. He always had a good impression of Drifting. So when he found out that Drifting was the mastermind, he had hoped that Drifting could give him a reasonable explanation. Unfortunately, Drifting directly admitted that it was a conspiracy as Gu Fei had imagined, so Gu Fei couldn't show mercy to him anymore. Drifting wasn't a good person, and Gu Fei wasn't a soft-hearted person who would show mercy to others. "Are you going to fight?" Drifting looked at Gu Fei and smiled. "I don't know what's going on, but when you killed the thief, your PK points didn't increase, right? Or maybe it didn't increase to 20. Anyway, if you attack any of us now, your PK points will definitely increase to 20. I think that's why you didn't kill Lefty even though you knocked him down, right?" Gu Fei also smiled. "It seems that you misunderstood me. I didn't kill Lefty because I still think we're friends, so I want to hear your explanation. As for my PK points, you don't have to worry about it. I'm very experienced in dealing with it." "Oh, I see. So are we still friends now?" Drifting asked. "We can be friends, but if you do something wrong, you have to be punished." "This has nothing to do with whether we're friends or not," Gu Fei said. "It's just a game." "Do you need to care so much?" Drifting asked. Hee, it's just a game, so I didn't take it too seriously. That's why I said we're still friends. Since it's just a game, you won't mind if I cut you down one level, right?" Gu Fei said. "If you cut me down, how are you going to leave this place?" Drifting walked to the window and pointed down. "Don't tell me you don't know what's going on down there." "The situation down there doesn't seem to change if I cut you down or not," Gu Fei said. "Not necessarily." Drifting smiled slyly. Gu Fei suddenly remembered something. He patted his head and said, "I see. You understand?" Gu Fei nodded. "You purposely gathered a group of people. You didn't want them to be cannon fodder. You wanted to send them into the government office." At this time, as one of the people who are currently looking at the flowers in the fog, you can openly enter the government office under the banner of going in and destroying them. What's even more perfect is that after you eliminate these guys, you can walk out in a dignified manner. These foggy people outside are not a threat to you at all. "That's right." Drifting nodded. "Those people can complete their task, but they have to pay the price of a level. As their companion, I helped them complete their task. As one of the people in the fog, I also helped them eliminate the troublemakers. As for me, I also took the opportunity to complete my task. Everyone got what they needed. Well, you just want to do a task. Is it necessary to make it so complicated?" Gu Fei said. "If you're in the fog, you'll know whether it's necessary or not." Apart from a few core members, the guild did not have much trust in anyone else. So, even if I join them, I won't be allowed to enter the government office when they have an important task. So, I can only create this situation, Drifting said. "But I'm surprised that you can come." Drifting suddenly smiled. "Without you, it wouldn't be so easy to break into the government office." "If we can't break into the government office, you can't either," Gu Fei said. "Of course. But you have the permission to enter the government office. Won't that arouse the suspicion of your president? Gu Fei said. Drifting smiled. Because I have the permission to enter the government office of each main city. Drifting pointed at the badge on his chest. I completed a task that spanned more than 20 main cities, so I got this special reward. I have the permission to enter the government office of any main city. Oh, if that's the case, then the left and right hands also have badges. Gu Fei looked at the chests of the two people and saw that they had the same badge. Drifting nodded. So, it's not difficult for us to get the chance to enter the government office. You? Didn't left and right hand come in with us? Gu Fei said. That is true, but I will naturally include the two of them in my speech. So, after we kill everyone in the government office, they just need to return to their original appearances and follow me out, Drifting said. Did they enter the government office? Could it be that no one saw them? Gu Fei said. The chaos down there is beyond your imagination. Think about it. A mission that lasted for so long suddenly suffered such a heavy blow, and so many people went crazy, Drifting said. I see. You've calculated everything, Gu Fei sighed. Except for you. Drifting looked at Gu Fei and said, inviting you to join us was a risky move. With you, the success rate of entering the government office will be higher, but how to get rid of you in the government office will be tricky. We'll know soon enough. Gu Fei clenched his sword. If it was someone else, I'd try to negotiate with them, Drifting said. What conditions? Gu Fei asked. Now, besides the four of us, there's only one person left in the building, don't worry. That person is gone. Gu Fei knew that Drifting was talking about number 2, who had been hiding behind the door until he was killed by number 4. Drifting and the others probably didn't know. Oh. Drifting didn't know. He nodded and said, then, there's only the 4 of us. The 3 of us can go out and tell the guild that we've killed all the targets. Maybe they won't believe us and stay, but if you wait patiently, they'll leave. Then, with your strength, it won't be hard for you to get out. But I feel like you won't compromise, Drifting said. That's right, Gu Fei said, I'm a short-sighted person. I don't know how far I can go. I just want to teach you 3 a lesson. As for how to get out, that's for later, right? If that's the case. Drifting had no choice but to raise his staff. Chapter 474. Drifting's spellcasting technique was very refined and powerful. It was especially difficult to dodge in a room like this. Drifting seemed to have done some special research on spellcasting in a room, so he was even more talented in this aspect. Gu Fei did not dare to be careless. Seeing that Drifting was about to make a move, Gu Fei hurriedly launched his killer move, teleportation and double flame flash. Ice Shadow. Drifting, who had been practicing spells for a long time, was also very fast. He instantly completed the chant. Gu Fei slashed down with his sword, and Drifting was cut into pieces. The ice fell to the ground, and steam rose up. Fake. Gu Fei hurriedly looked around and was shocked. Of the 4 drifters created by the Ice Shadow spell, 1 was smashed by him, 2 were in the other 2 corners of the room, and 1 had actually floated out of the window. And it was this person outside the window who smiled and waved at Gu Fei, saying, I'll make a move first, Brother Qianli. After saying that, he began to descend. Without waiting for Gu Fei to react, another silhouette had already flashed to the side of the window. With a leap, the silhouette had already leapt out. It was Left Hand Right's Love. With a horse-spurring meteor, he also leapt out of the window. Gu Fei hurriedly chased them out of the window and saw the 2 people who were still falling. He grabbed Drifting's legs with his left hand and threw himself into the air just before they hit the ground. Just like that, Drifting was flung out. Even though he took damage from the skill, he didn't suffer any damage from falling. Drifting was still alive after he landed. Love's left hand used Flying Swallow Slash to kick the wall. His body flew out and changed the direction of his fall. Even though he landed hard and rolled a few times, he was still alive. At the same time, the door behind him opened. Gu Fei looked back and saw that Love Left Hand had also run out. Gu Fei sighed and did not chase. Love Left Hand was number 6. When he lured Gu Fei to join the team, Gu Fei wanted to catch up to him and see his face, but he did not succeed. Their speed was about the same. At this time, Gu Fei also received a message from Drifting. Why did you chase them outside the window? I can't help you now, Gu Fei sneered. He knew that drifting meant that when you reach the window, the people below have already seen you, so I can't cover for you. This explanation seemed to be valid, but the two of them had jumped off the building one after another, so it was only normal for him to chase after them and take a look, right? With Drifting's meticulous thinking, he should have thought of this. This guy simply felt that confronting Gu Fei head-on was not a good idea, so he turned around and ran away. In the end, he even complained that Gu Fei didn't understand him. He was really mean. Gu Fei didn't reply to his message, but his message came again. How are you going to escape? I'm really curious. I'll be waiting in the courtyard to enjoy your performance. Gu Fei smiled again. How could he escape? In fact, he had already thought of an idea. Although it was not a very kind idea, he had no choice but to use it. Gu Fei left the house and went up to the 3rd floor. He came to Giordano's guard room. After talking to Giordano, he immediately began to praise Gu Fei's actions. Obviously, the daily task had been completed. Then he gave out the experience and money reward. Gu Fei was curious about what would happen to apple vinegar. Unfortunately, he couldn't get any information from Giordano. After looking at the time, Gu Fei buried his head in the sofa and fell asleep. In the courtyard outside the government office, Drifting and Love Left Hand looked very embarrassed. No one would have thought that the two of them had actually jumped out of the window. Everyone thought that the two of them had survived the disaster. He's really a master. Everyone saw the mage standing by the window and thought that he must be the one who had sent Drifting and the others flying out of the window. They also had an archer. Was he dead? While they were thinking, Love Left Hand stumbled out of the government office. He looked very miserable. He said as soon as he saw someone, too strong. At this time, 3 sighs Flowing Maple had already rushed to Drifting's side. Brother Drifting, you've worked hard. He didn't rush to ask about the task, but first showed his concern for his companions. 3 sighs Flowing Maple was a leader who paid attention to details. Drifting smiled and said with slight regret, unfortunately, we still couldn't complete it. Everyone looked at the window upstairs. At this time, Gu Fei had already left. How many people are left in the building? 3 sighs Flowing Maple asked. 1, Drifting replied. Are the others dead? 3 sighs Flowing Maple was quite happy. If Drifting hadn't been there, they could only watch as a few people ran around the government office. Who knew what kind of trouble they would cause? Now that there was only one person left, it was much less troublesome. They're all taken care of, but this one is too hard to deal with, Drifting said. Yes, yes. Leave the rest to us, 3 sighs Flowing Maple said. Drifting and the other 2 came out of the building in miserable states. 3 sighs Flowing Maple was too embarrassed to say, you guys go in and try again. Drifting nodded and retreated to the side with Love Left Hand and Love Right Hand. They looked at the window where Gu Fei had left, deep in thought. What is this guy going to do? I'm really curious, Drifting thought. His magic power isn't strong enough. It won't be enough for him to kill his way out of the courtyard. Besides, he has too many PK points. If he kills a few players, he will attract the attention of the NPC guards. There are more than 1 or 2 guards in the courtyard. I'm afraid he won't be able to provoke them, right? While Drifting was thinking, 3 sighs Flowing Maple had already started to make arrangements. Everyone, focus. Don't miss the front and back doors and all the windows. If you find anyone, kill them on the spot. Yes. Everyone in the courtyard shouted in unison. Drifting and the others had successfully killed several people who had entered the government office. Only one survivor was left, which was a great boost to their morale. So noisy. Hearing the loud shouts outside, Gu Fei mumbled discontentedly. He turned over and went back to sleep. As time ticked by, the members of Flower gazing through the fog stared at the building without blinking. 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour, 1 hour, 1.5 hours, everyone felt tired. Maybe that guy had forcefully gone offline, and everyone was waiting like idiots. Someone guessed. No, he's still here. Drifting, who was a good friend of Gu Fei, answered everyone's questions. At the same time, he was also curious about what Gu Fei was doing in the building. Was he killing time to get rid of his PK points? How long would it take? Or was he fighting with Giordano? That was even more impossible. There were so many NPC guards in that room. Since he knew about Gu Fei's quest, Drifting had specifically looked for Giordano's location. His conclusion was the same as Gu Fei's. There was no chance for him to attack. What the hell is he doing? Drifting was a little anxious. Flowing Maple 3 Sighs, who cared about the quest the most, was even more anxious. This guy had been hiding in the government office for so long. They really didn't know what he was doing. Flowing Maple 3 Sighs had wanted to invite Drifting and the other 2 players who had permission to go in and take a look, but he had resisted the urge several times. This time, after hesitating for a while, he finally stood up and walked over. Brother Drifting, I haven't seen this guy for so long. What do you think is going on? Flowing Maple 3 Sighs asked. I'm not sure. But there shouldn't be any other exit in this building. I've checked. Besides, there are many guards in the building, so he doesn't have a chance to do anything. He hasn't come out for so long. I really don't know what he's doing, Drifting said. Oh. Drifting's words dispelled Flowing Maple 3 Sighs' doubts. He was indeed worried that Gu Fei was planning to blow up the entire building. This guy hasn't come out for so long, and we're all very anxious. Should I trouble you 3, who have permission, to go in and take a look? Flowing Maple 3 Sighs finally made this request. Drifting immediately thought, is this it? This guy knows that if we wait for too long, we won't be able to bear it. Naturally, he will invite me in again. Then, he will wait inside to take me down to vent his anger. As Drifting thought about it, he felt that it was more and more possible. He knew that it might be a trap, but he wasn't stupid enough to take the risk. Thus, he rejected Flowing Maple 3 Sighs' request. This guy is very powerful. The 3 of us aren't his match. If we go in and meet him again, I'm afraid we won't be able to come out alive. I see. Then let's think of another way. Flowing Maple 3 Sighs smiled faintly and then left. Of course, he was very unhappy. Although it was normal for people to be selfish, he still hoped that his guild members would have a high level of awareness and wouldn't be afraid of sacrifices or difficulties for the benefit of the guild. Drifting obviously didn't have such a high level. This kind of person, no matter how high his level was, would be of limited help to the guild. Flowing Maple 3 Sighs thought. Thus, the waiting continued. Some guild players were already discussing in private. It's been so long. If this guy really wanted to ruin our quest, he would have already ruined it. If we wait outside like idiots, other than venting our anger, what else can we do? Thus, the leaders of the guild, led by Flowing Maple 3 Sighs, hurriedly came out to comfort the players. They conveyed the core idea of the guild not being arrogant and impatient. They told the players to stick to the general policy of building the guild and continue to wait patiently. In his speech, Flowing Maple 3 Sighs pointed out, right now, the opponent is loosening the reins only to grasp them better. He's purposely stalling for time to numb our thoughts and disarm us. He wants us to use this opportunity to create chaos within ourselves. Thus, the opponent of this battle is actually not anyone else but ourselves. As long as we get rid of the distracting thoughts in our hearts and wholeheartedly serve the guild, we will definitely win in the end. Flowing Maple 3 Sigh's speech caused a strong response. In the midst of the cheers, the members who were looking at the flowers in the fog all expressed that they would stand their ground until the last moment before they went offline. Time continued to pass. The sun gradually began to move to the west. It was already the afternoon of a day in the game. Suddenly, a muffled sound broke the silence. The front door of the government office had been opened. After waiting for nearly 3 hours, was it finally going to bear fruit? Chapter 475. The silence in the courtyard was broken by the sound of the door opening. All the players moved upon hearing the sound. They pointed their weapons at the door of the government office. The few melee characters standing at the door even raised their weapons. However, everyone's movements quickly froze. The person who walked out of the building was their quest issuer, Giordano. No one dared to slight him. All the players consciously made way for Giordano. After staying in the courtyard for so long, everyone was very familiar with Master Chiao's stroll route. However, a figure flashed. Gu Fei had already appeared behind Giordano with a smile on his face. Everyone screamed in surprise. Just as they were about to move, Gu Fei flipped his hand and placed the night streak beside Giordano. "Don't move." Everyone heard Gu Fei shout. Everyone was stunned. Then, they heard their guild leader, 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple, shout in the guild channel, "Don't move." This guy actually did this. He was too despicable. Although 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple had given the order to not move, he was gritting his teeth in anger. He had a strong desire to tear Gu Fei into pieces. However, he had to remind himself again and again that he had to look at the bigger picture. A lack of forbearance in small matters would spoil the bigger plan. Giordano was completely unaffected by the situation in front of him. He continued to walk on his own. Gu Fei followed beside him. His hand was steady, and the sword was very close. "Stand back." Gu Fei reminded the group of players in front of him who were looking at him with hatred. At this moment, everyone understood the stakes of Gu Fei's actions. If their quest issuer was attacked, what kind of punishment would they receive for completing their quest? This was something that they did not dare to imagine. It was because of this that Gu Fei planned to use an NPC as a hostage. This was an unprecedented hostage situation. The hostage did not seem to be aware of his situation. He did not cooperate, nor did he resist. He continued to walk on his own path. The kidnapper did not threaten Giordano's life at all. He just raised his sword lazily and maintained a very close distance with Giordano. As long as he tilted his sword slightly, he would be able to complete an attack. The courtyard was quiet again. No one dared to act rashly. Everyone was dumbfounded as they watched Gu Fei and Giordano walk away. The rustling of their footsteps was extremely ear-piercing. In contrast to the silence in the stadium, the guild channel was in full swing. After everyone condemned Gu Fei's shamelessness, they immediately began to come up with a plan, and there were only a few ideas. Archers would snipe, thieves would sneak in. Amidst the discussions, the players who were thieves and archers all volunteered. They were extremely enthusiastic, but the decision on how to proceed was still left to the guild leader, 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple. 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple's face darkened, and he couldn't make up his mind. This was because Gu Fei was too close to Giordano. Moreover, he did not need to kill the target. As long as he completed a casual attack, it would be the same as killing the hostage. Such a simple act of killing the hostage would make it extremely difficult for them to rescue the hostage. Whether it was long-range sniping or sneaking in, it was extremely risky. At this time, 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple had gradually gotten over his initial impulse when he saw Gu Fei's actions. He began to calmly consider the problem. There was no need to take this risk. Even if they killed this guy now, they would only be venting their anger. To the guild, there would be no benefits. To their guild, the quest completion rate was the most important thing. Giordano's appearance was the time to announce the completion rate. Today, after the ruckus caused by this group of people, they really did not know how low the quest completion rate had fallen. If it had already fallen to 0, then they would not need to care about Gu Fei's threat at all. With this thought in mind, 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple finally made a decision. Not only did he not give the order to attack, but he also had the guild members make way for him. He even took the initiative to clear the path to the courtyard's entrance. When Gu Fei saw this, he saved himself some trouble. He could not change Giordano's path. If he followed Giordano, he would always be a distance away from the courtyard's main entrance. Gu Fei originally wanted to force 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple to make way for him. However, when he saw that 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple had already guessed his thoughts and took the initiative to clear the path, he did not need to say anything more. Guild leader Flowing Maple, you really know the big picture, haha. When Gu Fei saw 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple and a few others appear in his field of vision, he laughed and greeted them. His smile was slightly forced because he did not feel very proud of what he had done. Even though the entire guild had been suppressed by this move, 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple naturally could not smile. Flowing Maple 3 Sighs obviously couldn't bring himself to laugh. With a cold expression, he said, "Everyone is just doing this for the mission." "Long live you understand, long live you understand," Gu Fei said. 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple's eyes flashed, but he did not reply. At this time, he had already arrived at the place where Giordano was going to stop. Here, he could ask about their quest completion rate. At this time, Gu Fei had already chosen his escape route. On this route, he did not discover any suspicious points. "Then, I'll take my leave first," Gu Fei said. 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple did not say anything. He did not want to say goodbye to Gu Fei at all. Gu Fei sighed deeply. He did not have any ill feelings towards 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple and Flowers in Flowing Maple. It was just that the mode of the quest had pushed the two of them into opposing sides. More importantly, in the words of Brother Yu and the others, Gu Fei's quest was something that he had imagined himself. Because of this, he had affected the other guild's quest and exhausted their efforts. It was inevitable that Gu Fei felt a little guilty. What made him feel even more guilty was that after causing such a ruckus, there was no progress in the quest at all. This meant that if he wanted to continue, he would have to come back and cause trouble again. He would have to give Flowers in Flowing Maple another headache. "I think it's better not to tell them about this. This is not good news for them." Gu Fei sighed as he quickly escaped from Giordano's side. Looking back, he saw that no one had attacked him. How trustworthy. Gu Fei felt even more guilty as he thought about it. However, this layer of guilt did not last long. Just when Gu Fei was about 30 meters away from Giordano, a distance that even a long-range mage could not reach, a tsunami of curses suddenly erupted from behind him. What was the meaning of being condemned by the masses? Gu Fei suddenly had a personal understanding of it. Following that, arrows from the archers who could still attack at this distance flew over like a swarm of locusts. Following that, Gu Fei saw some people flash out from the exit of the courtyard, firmly guarding the door. At the same time, the thieves who were lying in ambush on this path also began to appear, brazenly charging towards Gu Fei. Sure enough, it's not that easy. Gu Fei lamented, but he did not feel flustered. This was because this situation was within his expectations. He did not expect that after being sent halfway by Giordano, the Flowers in Flowing Maple would continue to quietly watch him walk the other half. So the moment he left Giordano's side, he was surprised that he was not attacked. In this way, it seemed that this was just the other party being cautious. The other party wanted to completely confirm the safety of the hostages before carrying out a sudden attack on him, the kidnapper. It was not a surprising arrangement. If there was no such arrangement, it would be surprising. Gu Fei suddenly turned his head and changed his direction. This made the Flowers in Flowing Maple, who had already shifted their focus to the exit, very surprised. And this new path was also what Gu Fei had been eyeing for a long time, a shortcut that was not guarded by anyone, a shortcut to the wall. Along the way, Gu Fei had only encountered 3 robbers who tried to stop him. He didn't go all out. With a feint and a fancy footwork, the thief was already behind him, turning around, and chasing again. Gu Fei's speed was not fake. Not any thief could catch up to him, and these 3 common thieves belonged to the category that could not catch up to him. Before he reached the bottom of the wall, Gu Fei's flying hook had already shot out, and with a swing, he had already caught the top of the wall. He ran, jumped, and stepped on the wall. His movements were done in one breath. In the blink of an eye, Gu Fei had already climbed 5 meters, and as he climbed, he put away the end of the rope. The thieves who had chased him to the bottom of the wall could only look up and sigh. The only threat that could pose was the archer. After all, it was difficult to climb and dodge at the same time. When Gu Fei successfully climbed to the top of the wall, he was still hit by 2 arrows. There really aren't that many experts. Gu Fei sighed after noticing the damage of these 2 arrows. The damage of these 2 arrows was mediocre, and it could not compare to the damage of a powerful person like Yutian Shinming. After throwing the arrows that he had pulled out of the wall, Gu Fei had already turned around and jumped down from the other side. When he landed, he was already in the fog, and his escape was successful. The flowers and flowing maple did not continue to chase after him, because at this time, 3 sighs of flowing maple had already finished talking to Giordano. What greatly surprised him was that although the quest completion rate had decreased, it was far less than he had expected. After such a big fuss, 3 sighs of flowing maple would not be surprised if they directly deducted 0 points. However, this result made him feel quite excited. The quest completion rate had only decreased by 5%. After 3 sighs of flowing maple announced this result in the guild, everyone was satisfied. It's only 5 points. It's not much, I thought it would all be deducted. Most of the people who thought this way were in a good mood at this time. It seems that we were a little too nervous. Someone said. These people might not be here to deliberately cause trouble. They might really be here for a quest. Someone said. But we still decreased by 5 points. Maybe we don't care about them and just let them complete the quest calmly. Then, it won't happen again, but who knows if they are real or not. Sigh, it's hard to predict people's hearts. The discussion became more and more profound. At this time, 3 sighs of flowing maple's brows were tightly knitted. This was because he had already learned from drifting that the most difficult person to deal with would definitely come again, and his quest would definitely cause the flowers in flowing maple to suffer heavy losses. Assassinate Giordano, butterfly knot. Next, how will Comrade Gu Fei create an opportunity to assassinate Master Qiao? Please look forward to it and guess. Chapter 476. Flowing maple 3 sighs placed a lot of importance on Gu Fei. This person had strength, methods, and courage. Even though he was alone, he was still a very difficult opponent to deal with. However, when Flowing Maple 3 sighs announced this news in the guild, it set off a wave of commotion. Many guild members expressed that if this guy dared to come again, they would definitely teach him a lesson. This kind of reaction made Flowing Maple 3 sighs sigh endlessly. Sure enough, everyone played the game for fun. It was better to have less trouble. This kind of peaceful life attitude had no market in the game. This guy is still very difficult to deal with. Everyone, don't underestimate him just because he's alone. Flowing Maple 3 sighs reminded everyone in the guild. After that, they began to rearrange the defense. Because they had personally witnessed Gu Fei's ultimate skill of crossing walls like it was a flat plane, there was a sentry every 3 steps and a sentry every 5. The defense was even more thorough than the main entrance of the courtyard. At this time, Gu Fei went to find Scissorhands after leaving the municipal courtyard. He was prepared to hand over the quest item that he wanted. Scissorhands, who had completed the quest, was naturally extremely grateful. He expressed that he would go through fire and water for Gu Fei on the spot. That's not necessary. Gu Fei hurriedly said, however, there's a small matter that I don't know if you can help me with. Go ahead, go ahead. Scissorhands hurriedly said. I heard that players who play the profession of tailoring can modify the appearance of a player's equipment when they reach a certain level. Look, I have a belt here. Gu Fei said as he pulled out the Wolf's brand belt that he felt was extremely vulgar. I wonder if I can modify it. Belt? That's easy. How do you want to modify it? Scissorhands was very happy to be able to help Gu Fei. The main thing is this wolf head buckle. I wonder if I can fix it. Don't you think this wolf head buckle is very vulgar? Gu Fei said. A little. The size of the wolf's head does not match the width and color of the belt. The craftsmanship of the belt is rather rough. Some might say that it exudes a sense of wildness, but from my perspective, this so-called wildness is not intentional. It's a result of the craftsman's lack of artistry and craftsmanship. He is unable to carve out the meaning that he wishes to convey, and that is why this situation is so confusing. Conceptually speaking, Scissorhands studied the design of the belt, and from his professional point of view, he immediately gave the belt an analysis. Wait a minute. Gu Fei interrupted Scissors and asked carefully, are you speaking Chinese? I don't understand. Just tell me if you can change it. Gu Fei said. I can, but I'm afraid I can't do it alone. Scissorhands said. Why? Gu Fei didn't understand. This belt is not just a product of the tailor class. This wolf head buckle is the core part of the belt. However, it belongs to the blacksmith class. Therefore, to completely change the design of this belt, we will need the cooperation of at least a high-level blacksmith player, Scissorhands said. Gu Fei immediately opened the mercenary channel. Experts, is there anyone with a high blacksmith skill? No one answered. Therefore, Gu Fei asked again. The Han family young master finally replied, do you know that your question is very stupid? Even though there are not many types of life skills in the parallel world, the content is very large and it is very difficult to improve. Players who have the energy to level up will not be able to reach our current level. If you want to find a high-level blacksmith, go to the newbie market. Don't come to my elite team. Is that so? Gu Fei was confused. He then asked Scissorhands, what level are you? Level 32. It's not easy to level up a life skill, right? Yes. For the sake of this blueprint, I put in another level, Scissorhands said. Gu Fei patted him and then asked, where can I find a high-level blacksmith? Do you know anyone? I know one, but he is not online right now, Scissorhands said regretfully. Oh, it's good that you know someone. I'm not in a hurry. It's about time for me to go offline. Hold on to the belt for now. I'll come find you tomorrow. It won't take too long to change it, right? Gu Fei said. As long as I'm here, the changes will be done quickly. Scissorhands looked at the belt that Gu Fei had stuffed into his hands. He could even see the attributes of the belt. Not to mention the content, just the purple text was glowing. To casually hand such equipment to someone else, how much of a person did that require? Scissorhands looked at Gu Fei in a daze. He saw Gu Fei say to him, then I'll find you tomorrow. After saying that, he left. Gu Fei quickly went to the revival point and went offline. This was really disappointing news for the players who were looking at things through the fog. At that moment, it was late at night in the real world. Many experts of the stay-up-late class were logging in one after another. After hearing about the events of the day, they were ready to fight it out with this expert. However, they received news that he had already gone offline. The long night made it even more difficult for them to sleep. This guy's online time is relatively stable. Usually, he'll be online from after dinner to 10 o'clock. Normally, he won't be online for more than 3 hours. Drifting Maple 3 Sighs continued to explain what he knew about Gu Fei. This kind of activity is like an office worker. How can there be experts like this? Flowing Maple 3 Sighs was surprised. Experts were all built up over time. It was hard to imagine that a guy who only played for 3 hours a day would be a first-rate expert in the game in terms of level, skill, and equipment. Something like this. Drifting gave a brief introduction of Gu Fei's Kung Fu. This was no longer a secret among the group of people who went on a mission with reigning the Four Seas to Sunset City. Everyone knew that Gu Fei was so strong because of his Kung Fu. Kung Fu. Flowing Maple Three Sighs did not appear surprised like the others. It was as if he was not completely unfamiliar with this. Guild Master Flowing Maple. Have you heard of this? Drifting noticed the abnormality in Flowing Maple Three Sighs' words. Yes. Flowing Maple Three Sighs nodded. Our city also has a player who claims to know Kung Fu. His name is Windcord, one of the top 10 Grandmasters of Combat. He doesn't have any guild or mercenary group background. He's a loner and loves to help others. He's very famous in our city and has a good reputation. Grandmaster of Combat. Number 1 on the Grandmasters of Combat ranking, one of the top 5. He also knows Kung Fu. There's also a mercenary group in Sunset City that gathers a bunch of people like him. Most of them are Grandmasters of Combat, Drifting said. Yes, the Grandmaster of Combat class seems to be closer to Kung Fu, so people like this class. Flowing Maple Three Sighs said. Then what about Qinli? Why would he choose a mage? Mages and Grandmasters are obviously not reliable. Drifting said. Challenge himself? Surpass the limit? Flowing Maple Three Sighs raised Gu Fei's level of thinking. Drifting didn't deny it. He only said, according to my observation, normal players don't have the ability to fight against this kind of person. You've seen how Qinli can come and go freely among so many of us. I think it's best to ask this Wind Cord to deal with him. We can try, but this person doesn't seem to like guilds or mercenary groups. I'm not sure if it'll work, Flowing Maple Three Sighs said. Let's try first, Drifting suggested. Flowing Maple Three Sighs nodded and immediately started to think of a way to contact this Grandmaster of Combat, Windcord. On the other hand, Sword Demon had already contacted 100 Grandmasters of Combat, who was online at night. The two had also completed the transaction. The income of thousands of gold coins made 100 Grandmasters of Combat so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. When he sent a message to the middleman, Gu Fei, he saw that Gu Fei was sleeping soundly on the sofa in Giordano's room and didn't reply. Sword Demon thought that Gu Fei was in full swing for the quest, so he didn't dare to disturb him again. 100 Grandmasters of Combat was immersed in the joy of the jingling of money and didn't pay much attention to any other details. He sent another message, but Gu Fei didn't reply, so he thought that Gu Fei was busy and didn't disturb him again. As for Brother Yu and the other two who were on their way to Forest Shade City, their journey was relatively smooth. However, they encountered some trouble when they were inquiring about the log cabin in the oak forest. They asked passers-by about the oak forest, and they could point to a piece of it. In Forest Shade City, oak trees weren't rare at all. They had no choice but to ask the boss of the area, Water Depth, for help. But for some reason, Water Depth seemed to be in a very bad mood at this time and refused all visitors. The three of them could only helplessly wander in the woods around Forest Shade City, asking people if there was an oak forest nearby, if there was a log cabin in the oak forest, and if there was an NPC in the cabin. Such efforts weren't in vain. At 3:37 in the morning, the three of them actually found a log cabin in an oak forest in the woods of Forest Shade City, and saw an NPC called Gru in the cabin. It's here. Brother Yu shouted excitedly. Gru was a blonde young man with a calm face. Brother Yu showed him all the quest skills he had mastered, but it was all in vain. Whether it was the mention of the Hayes assassin Andrew Su, the Assassin's League, or the quest to assassinate Giordano, Gru always smiled and shook his head in response. There's no other way. It seems that we have to use the diary as a prop. Brother Yu sighed. But Qinli isn't online right now. Yutian Shinming said. He'll be online tomorrow night. Unscathed in Battle said. I really want to die. brother Yu said. The long night was finally over. For Gu Fei, it was just an ordinary night on an ordinary day, but in the game, a large group of people were in a mess because of him. On the side of Flowers in the Fog Guild alone, they had no less than 10 guild meetings to discuss how to deal with this guy tomorrow. Drifting had basically relayed all the information he had to them. Not only did they know how scary Gu Fei was, but they also knew that he had a group of scary friends. A child elite group organized by Han Family Young Master, which was a gathering of well-known names in the online gaming world. In the mercenary group tournament, 6 people wiped out 80 people. Butterfly Knot, a transitional chapter, sorting out the current plot progress, cough. Chapter 477. Looking at the flowers in the fog, he spent the night and the day nervously but not absent-mindedly. Based on the existence of Gu Fei's companions, 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple made several adjustments to their defense strategy until he felt that it was foolproof. At that moment, Drifting announced that Gu Fei was online. Everyone in the guild was on high alert, as if they were facing a formidable enemy. At that moment, 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple was glad that Drifting was in the guild. Just the notification of their opponent's login and offline saved them a lot of trouble. Gu Fei, who was online, immediately felt the crowd's expectations. During this period, Brother Yu had sent him more than 20 messages even though he knew that Gu Fei wasn't online. This meant that he hoped that Gu Fei would appear soon. At that moment, when Gu Fei appeared, Brother Yu sent him 3 messages, diary. Send it. Quick. One sentence was split into 3 messages. Brother Yu's eagerness was evident. Found it? Gu Fei replied leisurely as he walked out of the offline area. Yeah. If I can't get the quest, it must be because I need the quest item, Brother Yu said. Alright, I'll send it over. Gu Fei said. I'll be guarding the mailbox, Brother Yu replied. After ending the call with Brother Yu, Gu Fei opened Scissorhand's message, the belt has been fixed and sent to you. You can change it if you're not satisfied. Gu Fei saw that it was perfect. He went to his mailbox and found that both problems could be dealt with. He checked his friend list and saw that Scissorhand wasn't online. He left a message to express his gratitude. He rushed to the mailbox and first sent Andrew Su's diary to Brother Yu. Then, he found the belt that Scissorhand had sent. When he opened it, he found that there was no reference. This was because Gu Fei had no impression of what the belt originally looked like. However, at least the belt in front of him was like what Gu Fei had expected. It had erased the original wretched look, which made him feel extremely satisfied. He once again left a message to Scissorhand to express his approval of his work. After leaving the mailbox, Gu Fei ran off to carry out the bounty quest. If he didn't clear the PK points on him, it would be inconvenient for him to move around in the government compound. As a result, after clearing more than 20 PK points, Gu Fei looked at the time. It seemed that it was getting late. He felt that it would be better to go to the government office to continue the quest when he had enough time. So, he simply focused on completing the wanted quest until he went offline. When Gu Fei logged into the game, all the members of Up and Down waited in the courtyard like watchdogs. In the end, Gu Fei didn't even show his face. When Drifting told everyone that Gu Fei had gone offline, everyone felt like they had been played. In the blink of an eye, another day and night had passed. When Gu Fei went online again, the first thing he received was Brother Yu's unparalleled resentment. He held Andrew Su's diary in his hand and spent more than 2 hours at Gru's place. He almost wanted to read the diary aloud, but Gru didn't move at all. He responded to Brother Yu with the same attitude as the day before yesterday. This could only mean one thing: he had the item, but he didn't accept the quest. The 3 of them, who had made a wasted trip, were quite depressed. Their confident analysis turned out to be wrong in the end, which also made Brother Yu feel very embarrassed. The 3 of them were dispirited in Forest Shade City, and they didn't mention coming to Xia Wu City to meet up with everyone. Gu Fei was in high spirits at this time. Yesterday, he washed off all the PK points, and today, he came a little early. He was ready to go to the government office to make a scene. After listening to Brother Yu's long-winded and irresponsible words of comfort, he immediately went to greet Sword Demon, saying that there might be some meaningful things to do today, and asked if he wanted to participate. Sword Demon readily agreed. The two arranged a place to meet, and they went to the government office together. Is the new skill good? Gu Fei was too lazy to use messages to chat unless he had no other choice. It was already the day before yesterday that the Sword Ghost had obtained the skill scroll from the 100 Eras strategist, and he had only asked about it today. Sword Demon didn't have time to speak. Just by looking at his excited expression, Gu Fei already knew the answer. What new discoveries did you make in your quest? Sword Demon asked Gu Fei again. The day before yesterday, I actually went to the government office with a group of people. Gu Fei told him about the 9 people. Sword Demon listened with great interest, and his eyes flashed with envy from time to time. It seemed that he was a little tired of the old-fashioned game life of leveling up, farming equipment, and running quests every day. He also looked forward to Gu Fei's exciting game life. I didn't expect drifting to be so scheming. Sword Demon sighed after listening to the story. Yes. Are you familiar with him? Gu Fei found that he really didn't know much about this person. Sword Demon shook his head and said, Yutian might be slightly familiar with him. Yutian? Does drifting count as a human in his eyes? Gu Fei said. Probably not. The two agreed that Yutian Shenming, who despised and ridiculed drifting, wouldn't be able to get any meaningful information about drifting. Then, what did you find in the process? Sword Demon asked. Remember the number 7 I just talked about? Gu Fei said. The one who was looking for the sleeping assassin in the yard. Sword Demon laughed. Among the 9 people, there were a few people who died that were quite a joke. Yes, the key was the assassin he was looking for. Gu Fei said. What is it? The assassin's attire is very similar to Haze's. Gu Fei said. What is it? Around here. Gu Fei patted his left arm. There's something embroidered on it. If I remember correctly, it's the symbol of an organization called Assassin's Alliance that Haze mentioned in his diary. Gu Fei said. There's something like that? Gu Fei nodded. I remember that the Haze assassin also had one on his left arm, and there was also a silly doodle in his diary where he drew this thing. What you're saying is that this sleeping assassin and the Haze shadow assassin belong to the same organization, so they might have the same mission. Sword Ghost said. Gu Fei nodded. Then you want to wake him up. What kind of breakthrough do you want to find from him? Sword Demon said. It seems more useful if he's asleep. Gu Fei said. Why? Haze's assassin once mentioned in his diary that when an assassin lies down to sleep, he will always point his feet in the direction he wants to go. Gu Fei said. I have an impression. Sword Demon said, so, although this assassin is asleep, he just happened to let us know where he's going? Yes. I've already seen the direction he's pointing in. It's a small woodshed in the backyard. Maybe there are some clues hidden there. Gu Fei said. Clues? I've completely grasped Giordano's daily routine in the game. Unfortunately, he's never alone. There's always a large group of system guards around him, and outside the government office, there's also those foggy guys. So, I think, to assassinate this guy, there might be some special methods. Maybe the direction pointed out by this sleeping assassin is the method we're looking for. Gu Fei said. Your analysis makes sense. Sword Demon couldn't help but nod, but in the end, he added with his usual seriousness, if it's not a game. Huh. As a game, it's hard to imagine that the goal of other people's missions would have such a connection with your assassination. Sword Demon said. Normal games might not, but this game, I think it's possible. Gu Fei said. No matter what, we can always try. If that's really the case, then it looks like we should really change the way we think about the game. Sword Demon said thoughtfully. Now, let's go to the mailbox to get the diary. Gu Fei patted Sword Demon. From the mailbox, he took the diary that brother you had sent back. Gu Fei quickly flipped to the Haze Assassin's graffiti and nodded. There's no mistake, this is the pattern. Sword Demon looked at it and shook his head, indicating that he had no impression of this pattern on the Haze Assassin. Now we're going to break through the wall again. Gu Fei said. He wasn't stupid. He didn't forget that Drifting was the mastermind behind the 9 people. So, his mission goal was to assassinate Giordano. Right now, everyone probably knew. They dared to assassinate their mission publisher. He didn't know to what extent these guys would upgrade their defense mode. This level was quickly seen by Gu Fei and Sword Demon. At this time, there were actually people guarding the outer wall of the government office. The two hid in the fog a few times and found that it was the same. Sword Demon sighed. Looks like they were tortured badly by you last time. Gu Fei was also helpless. They're too strong, they can't even climb the wall. Looks like we have to kill one. Sword Demon said. They probably didn't think of letting one person defend against me, right? Kill one, expose our existence, and then a large group will surround us. Gu Fei said. If that's the case, we have to kill a few more to confuse them. Sword Demon said. Yes, I like this bold method. Gu Fei praised. Sword Ghoul, on the other hand, started to reflect on himself. Actually, I'm eager to use this new skill in PvP, Gu Fei smiled bitterly. It seemed that everyone had the violent blood of PK flowing in their hearts, but they had to suppress it due to their moral values. Gu Fei continuously issued wanted missions and Sword Demon came up with such a bold method at this time to find a reasonable excuse for himself to PK. From a certain point of view, everyone was hypocritical. But this kind of hypocrisy was absolutely necessary. Even the system couldn't bear to see Apple Vinegar so calmly and straightforwardly kill if he wanted to, so he directly raised it to a daily wanted mission. As for this guy's punishment, Gu Fei had some guesses, a drop in level. Yesterday, Gu Fei heard that the top 10 thieves list had been updated and Apple Vinegar had disappeared from the list. This matter was quite controversial in Xiaowu City. This executioner who killed people like flies was actually killed by accident. This was something that the people had been eagerly waiting for a long time. And Gu Fei felt that maybe his fight with Apple Vinegar, although it was a wanted mission, had to be punished for PK. This more or less reflected the difference between a daily and a normal mission. Chapter 478. So, let's do it. After a moment of silence, the two looked at each other and said. Then, they nodded firmly. As long as they made up their minds, there would be no doubt or hesitation. Gu Fei and Sword Demon happened to be such people. We don't have to kill them on my side and on your side. We can just harass them and make them confused about our direction. Then, we can choose a random place to climb the wall. What do you think? Gu Fei asked Sword Demon. Very good. Sword Demon agreed. The two began to move. For the defenders on the outside, this was a disaster. In the eyes of these ordinary players, not to mention Gu Fei, even Sword Demon was an expert that they could only look up to. Moreover, Sword Demon's new skill, Fog Ambush, although it was dropped from the Fog Assassin, it was a skill that Fog Assassin had never used before. The skill started like a warrior's charge. When it was cast, the player would have a movement speed and impact that far exceeded the character's normal state. For a thief who moved fast to begin with, it was unbelievably fast. Another feature was that during the activation of this skill, the player could enter stealth at any time. In this state, the player's movement speed would not be reduced at all. Although the duration was only 2 seconds, it was definitely a very valuable 2 seconds. Just think about it, approaching at such a high speed was already a headache. Suddenly disappearing when approaching would be even more difficult to defend against. Even after hearing this feature, Gu Fei felt that it was very difficult to deal with this skill. After all, humans weren't machines. Their attacks weren't so rigid. If it was full of changes, it would be difficult for Gu Fei to have the confidence to grasp it every time. As a result, Sword Demon became even more of a nightmare for these poor players. They saw an abnormally fast figure suddenly rush out of the fog. The speed was so fast that many people were at a loss. Sword Demon was even more obsessed with familiarizing and practicing the skill. Every time he used the 2 seconds of forced disappearance, he attacked 7 people in a row. 6 people didn't react, and the 7th person reflexively covered his face. The concept of mercy that Sword Demon understood wasn't the same concept as Gu Fei's. He would go all out from the start, but after discovering that the enemy was clearly no match for him, he wouldn't continue to chase them. This was the concept of mercy that he, the #1 expert in the game, understood. Unlike Gu Fei, who deliberately controlled the damage and didn't show mercy, Sword Demon didn't have this kind of PK habit. As a result, 5 of the 7 people who came up were instantly killed on the spot. 2 of them were warriors. Although they weren't heavy armored warriors, it was still an impressive achievement. It was enough to show that this skill was far beyond the level of the current skill. This kind of destructive power was impressively above Gu Fei's magic damage. Such a powerful destructive power was like a stone that caused 1,000 ripples. The guild channel of flowers in the fog had already exploded with noise, especially the 2 warriors who had been insta-killed. Up until now, the term insta-kill had never been associated with warriors. Now, however, they were actually insta-killed by a thief. Both of them were in disbelief. Who is it? Flowing Maple 3 Sighs was bewildered. 1 hit to kill a warrior. This kind of damage was even higher than that Chinli drunk. Where did such a strong enemy come from? A thief? Extremely high damage. Extremely fast. Drifting asked these 3 questions in a row. After getting an affirmative answer, he asked, female? Red? Very beautiful. The answer was, male. Black clothes. Extremely ugly. It's Sword Demon. Drifting quickly got the answer. Sword Demon. That's Sword Demon. Yesterday, you didn't say that his attack was so strong. Flowing Maple 3 Sighs said. When Drifting introduced Sword Demon, he sighed with regret. It made people feel that this Sword Demon wasn't as strong as he was in the past. He didn't have the domineering aura of a king of the world. I'm not too sure. He shouldn't be this strong, unless he had a fortuitous encounter recently, Drifting said. If that's the case, then he's here. Before Flowing Maple 3 Sighs could finish, he was suddenly interrupted by someone beside him. He was dressed in a Grandmaster of Combat's attire. He had been hiding under a big tree beside them. It was the expert Grandmaster of Combat that Flowing Maple 3 Sighs had specially invited, Feng Xian. Flowing Maple 3 Sighs originally didn't have any confidence in inviting this expert. He didn't expect things to be so unexpected. After contacting this person through his friend and asking him to help deal with the video mage, this person actually agreed readily. Flowing Maple 3 Sighs couldn't believe that things had gone so smoothly. When he thought about it again, he could only conclude that martial artists like to compete with each other. Hence, he hadn't taken action to help his guild complete a quest. Instead, he had taken action for his own challenge. As expected, after Feng Xian arrived at the government compound, he didn't care about any of Flowing Maple 3 Sighs guild meetings, core discussions, or defensive arrangements. As expected, the sunlight here is the best. This was the only thing Feng Xian said after entering the government compound. Then, he leaned against the tree and quietly waited for the expert mage to appear. Yesterday, after waiting for an entire day, Flowing Maple 3 Sighs was worried that the eccentric expert they had invited would become impatient. Who would have thought that the other party did not seem to mind at all? Today, he still came on time as soon as he logged in. Without saying a word, he went to the big tree and continued to lean against it. His lazy appearance made Flowing Maple 3 Sighs question this expert that he had high hopes for. He already felt that he couldn't rely on this guy too much. Feng Xian naturally didn't know about the discussion in the guild channel. However, he heard the conversation with Drifting after that. He's here. Flowing Maple 3 sighs nodded. However, he's still outside the compound. Although they were actually discussing the situation with the Sword Demon, Gu Fei's harassment had appeared at the same time as the Sword Demon. However, it wasn't as shocking as the Sword Demon's. I've already harassed the 7th Corps. What about you? Outside the compound, the Sword Demon was also sending a message to Gu Fei. The 11th Corps. Gu Fei said. So fast. Sword Demon exclaimed. He had already tried his best to be efficient. Who would have thought that Gu Fei would be faster than him? It's more convenient for me. I don't need to do anything. I just need to show my face and they'll start screaming. Gu Fei said. Oh. Sword Demon understood. That's enough, right? Enough. Where do we meet? Sword Ghost randomly chose a coordinate, and the two of them began to rendezvous. At this time, more than 10 places that were under attack began to gather people. Perhaps it wasn't for defense, but to gather more people and gain a sense of security. I don't think the perimeter is for defense. It's just a warning to let the people in the compound know that we've arrived. After meeting up, Gu Fei said. Yes, that's right. Sword Demon agreed with Gu Fei's judgment. So what's next? Let's go. As long as they don't figure out where we're going to break in, our goal will be achieved. Sword Demon said. Gu Fei nodded. The two quickly found a suitable location. Because of the harassment, the perimeter defense was already very scattered at this time, and there were many undefended loopholes. Gu Fei sighed. The defense arrangement is still not in place. But it's so scattered, I think it's still difficult for us to find this kind of blind spot to sneak in. Sword Demon shook his head and said, some things can't be helped. They're just players in the game. How can they have the discipline of an army? That's right. Gu Fei nodded. What's more, if they want to clearly grasp our movements, they need someone to sacrifice themselves. This kind of order can't be given in the game. Sword Demon said. You know it very well. Gu Fei said. Of course, I've been through it. Sword Demon laughed. Oh yeah, I forgot. Gu Fei patted his head. He somewhat forgot that Sword Demon was also the boss of a famous guild in the past. How could he not know the rules and regulations of these guilds? However, if there's a guy like Gongzi, this kind of arrangement will definitely be more perfect than them. Gu Fei said again. Hee hee. Sword Demon laughed dryly. If it was that guy, at this time, he would naturally sacrifice the cannon fodder without hesitation. Moreover, he would always find an excuse to make people not aware of the truth. Okay, let's go. Gu Fei had already thrown out 2 flying hooks at this time, and a rope was handed to Sword Demon. After the baptism of that day, Sword Demon was no longer unfamiliar with this movement. He climbed up skillfully. His progress is very fast. Gu Fei said silently in his heart. That day, Sword Demon wasn't so skillful. It seemed that he had practiced in private these 2 days. He even cared about this kind of thing. This guy was really competitive. Immediately, Gu Fei also grabbed the long rope and followed Sword Demon up the wall. It's actually going so smoothly. Gu Fei, who was on the top of the wall, was a little surprised. He said to Sword Demon while collecting the flying hooks. What do you mean? It's been 2 days. I thought they would find a way to climb up the wall and then arrange guards on the wall. Gu Fei said. This. Sword Demon also helped collect a flying hook and said, probably only you think it's simple. How many people will know what this thing is and how it's made? This kind of claw hook is something that definitely doesn't exist on the market. What mission did you get it from? If you don't say it, even brother you won't be able to guess it. Also, let's not talk about how to climb. I think this thing needs a certain level of skill. It's not that simple, right? It does need a little bit. Gu Fei admitted. That's why I said that even if someone has seen this thing with their own eyes, it's difficult to make it. Sword Demon said. Your analysis makes sense. Gu Fei said. Indeed, in this game environment, only players like Sword Ghost and the others who were born as gamers would be able to see things more clearly. So what's next? Of course, observe first. Gu Fei took out his binoculars and observed. Chapter 479. Since the position of climbing the wall was not determined by the two of them, they finally chose a place that was relatively close to the backyard. Gu Fei took out his binoculars to observe carefully, and the Sword Demon waited quietly on the side. After a while, Gu Fei put down the binoculars, and the Sword Demon looked at him and asked. Gu Fei sighed, the focus of the defense is under the wall, and it is impossible to sneak in. If I had known this, I think it would be no different to go directly through the front door. If we go directly down, we will be drowned in the sea of people's war, Gu Fei said. What about the small woodshed you mentioned? Can we kill our way in? Sword Demon said. It is completely possible, but if we can't get through the door, we will die outside. If we can get in, we will die inside, Gu Fei said, spreading his hands. No wonder the layout outside the wall is not very thorough, because there is no need to be thorough. They only need to know that we are coming, and then the people inside the wall will be more alert, Sword Demon said. Gu Fei nodded, they don't care where we are going to climb over the wall, there are so few people. Sword Demon was filled with emotion, and couldn't help but recall the extraordinary years when he led the Against the Sky Guild. If it was in that era, he could just raise his arm and lead a large number of brothers and sisters to directly crush these guys. Would there be a need to sneak around like now? Diversion is the only way. Gu Fei said, but there are only two of us. If only one of us jumps down, I'm afraid we won't be able to lure them away. Brother Yu and the others are still over at Forest Shade City, and they didn't say whether they will come back or not. Sword Demon began to analyze how they could have more people. Drifting is now an enemy. Gu Fei was also thinking. Strange Pupil and Yen Xiaozhu? Sword Demon asked. It seems, they are not friends. Gu Fei said. Is there anyone else? Sword Demon thought. I think, there's another one, Gu Fei said. Young Master. The two of them said at the same time, and then fell silent. What is Young Master doing? Gu Fei asked the Sword Demon. Sword Demon glanced at Gu Fei, meaning that he shouldn't have asked this question. Gu Fei replied with an, oh, and opened the message. I'll ask him. Are you bored? Ha 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 ha. Gu Fei sent a message to the Han family Young Master. What's the matter? Han family Young Master asked directly. There is a very meaningful job, and I think only you are the most suitable candidate. Gu Fei said. Did you drink too much? You're trying to trick me. The Han family Young Master said. I'll let the Sword Demon talk to you. Gu Fei switched the conversation to the mercenary channel. So the Sword Demon gave a simple explanation, including some of Gu Fei's analysis of Andrew Su's diary. The young master of the Han family, who was drinking in the tavern, suddenly became interested when he saw the content. This seems a little interesting. What I'm thinking is that if the sleeping assassin came for the same purpose as the Misty Shadow assassin, then there must be something important in the woodshed he pointed at. Gu Fei said. Did you search him? Maybe there's something there. Han family Young Master said. No. I didn't think of this when I was with him. Gu Fei said. He only came up with this idea when he saw number 7 being taken out and killed from the window. He looked down from above and suddenly noticed the assassin's sleeping posture and the direction his feet were pointing at. If the conditions allowed it, he would naturally go check it out. Unfortunately, he didn't have the conditions at that time, so he had to start all over again. Brother Yu and the other two who could also watch the mercenary channel were also attracted by this analysis. Is this analysis really okay? Brother, you interrupted doubtfully. Why not? You three came all the way here for nothing. You might as well stay here with me. Gu Fei said. The three were very sad. Gu Fei really touched their sore spot. What you need now is someone to divert attention from the defense of the courtyard. You need to find an opportunity to investigate the sleeping assassin and the woodshed, right? Han family young master repeated the difficulties Gu Fei and the sword demon were facing. Yes. The two answered together. This isn't something that can be done by one person. We need a team with a certain level of strength. Han family young master said. It will take some time for the three of us to come back. Qianli will also be offline when we come back. Why don't we do it tomorrow? Brother Yu and the other two said. It doesn't seem like it's only the three of you. Han family young master said. The three of them were very depressed. Strange pupil, help me contact her. Han family young master suddenly said. Oh. What do you want? Gu Fei asked. Let's meet at the tavern I'm at. I'll wait for her at the door. Han family young master spoke in the tone of a boss who only gave orders without explaining. Gu Fei was also helpless. When he saw that strange pupil was really there, he tried to contact him. Strange pupil said that he had something to do and that he would be there soon. Gu Fei thanked him profusely. In his heart, he was wondering why Han family young master was looking for strange pupil. Was he trying to borrow this lady's connections? It didn't seem realistic. Gu Fei knew that the Han family's young master would never tell him about this beforehand. It would be more practical to ask strange pupil about it after they met. Do you know what he's up to this time? Gu Fei, who was bored, could only ask the sword ghost. I don't know. Sword demon shook his head. The two of them had no choice but to wait patiently. In comparison, the guild members on the other side of the wall were even more anxious. They had already confirmed that the outer perimeter was under attack. They would ask each other, is he here, every few seconds until their mouths were dry. Life was unpredictable. Gu Fei and the sword demon were kind and did not want to harass them like this. However, their simple and crude human wave defense plan left the two of them at their wits' end. They had no choice but to stop their actions and harass them. The two of them on the wall sneezed non-stop. The players who were looking at them in confusion were cursing at them. After some time, Han family young master finally said in the guild channel, all right, pay attention to the situation and decide what to do. What did you do? Sword demon asked. I found some helpers, Han family young master replied. Gu Fei was smart enough to send a private message to strange pupil. What did he say to you? He asked about the situation of the guilds and mercenary groups in Xia Fog City, strange pupil said. When Gu Fei heard this, he understood. This trick again. What? Sword demon did not understand. Just like in Waterside City, betraying Jian Nan and the others. This time, it's probably to provoke the guilds here to harass us. Gu Fei said. This method is feasible. Sword demon, who knew how complicated the competition between guilds was, agreed with this plan. Seeing that a guild was about to complete the promotion quest, there would definitely be many guilds that would be extremely unhappy. In reality, there was no need for anyone to instigate them. They would think of ways to cause trouble. Perhaps young Master Han was just trying to convince them that this was a very good opportunity. During the Warring States period, this method was called the Vertical Alliance. Han family young master said. You really are a great politician, diplomat, and strategist, Gu Fei said. I thought you already knew. Han family young master said. You guys deal with it yourselves. Of course. Gu Fei and Sword Demon regained their focus. The two had already moved to the top of the wall in the backyard, the position closest to the sleeping assassin. Look, the sleeping assassin is probably in that position. There's a big tree. Do you see it? Gu Fei passed the binoculars to Sword Demon and guided him. "Oh, found it," Sword Demon said. "You take care of him. I'll go to the firewood shed." Gu Fei pointed to the firewood shed in the corner of the backyard. In order to save time, the two decided to split up. Naturally, they did not know that this small firewood shed was actually Gu Fei's main target. There was no special arrangement for this place. Just like every other inch of the place, there were several players who could see this place. Gu Fei continued to wait patiently on the wall, waiting for the Han family young master to show his might. In the blink of an eye, an hour passed. What's going on? Gu Fei was confused in the channel. Be patient, they need time too. Han family young master said. Sword Demon replied, verifying the reliability of the information, organizing people, and coming up with an attack strategy all require time. Speaking of which, how did you encourage these guilds? Gu Fei asked. Guilds? Who said I encouraged them? Han family young master asked back. Didn't you say? Gu Fei was shocked. You said the method we used to deal with Jiannan Yu counts as a collaboration. I don't think I said it was the same this time. Han family young master said. Gu Fei flipped through the chat records, and in the end, he had to admit that young master Han really didn't say anything. But when Gu Fei and Sword Demon thought this way, this guy did not refute at all. He was purposely causing the two to misunderstand. This kind of thing was clearly meaningless, so why was this guy so excited about it? Gu Fei had the urge to cut someone up. Then what did you do? Sword Demon asked. One of you is a mage and the other is a thief. I just hired some players of the same class to harass them. Han family young master said. This. Is it possible? The two were confused. It's not possible in other places, but it's possible in Xiaoyu City. Xiaoyu City's special feature was naturally its foggy days. Thieves had stealth and could escape after one attack. Mages, on the other hand, could simply hide in the fog and cast area of effect spells. To impersonate, these two classes did have a certain degree of flexibility. But Gu Fei and Sword Demon had the same thought. Normal players could impersonate each other, but how could they impersonate experts like us? Chapter 480. Two groups of professional players appeared outside the government compound of Xia Fog City. One of them was made up of 6 magicians, while the other was made up of 6 bandits. The players leading them were also famous characters in Xia Fog City, the magician's strange pupil and the bandit Yen Xiaozhu. When the two sisters found out from their conversation with the Han family young master that they were also here for Gu Fei's quest, they immediately expressed their willingness to help Gu Fei's quest. Therefore, the Han family young master was more than happy to let go of the task and handed it over to strange pupil, who had more connections. Of course, Gu Fei was the one who paid for the quest. Gu Fei also owed the Han family young master a favor. In the end, the Han family young master was just an intermediary. As for the imitation part, it was just wishful thinking on the part of Gu Fei and the Sword Demon. In fact, the Han family young master did not intend to imitate them at all. He just wanted to create some chaos and distract the enemy. The magicians and bandits introduced by strange pupil were not weaklings either. They were skilled in their techniques. The magicians cast spells randomly in the fog, moving to a different location after casting a spell. The bandits targeted the slower classes. They would sneak up and stab someone before running away. Their style was very similar to the mist assassin. However, a few minutes later, the two groups realized that there was no one under the outer wall of the compound. Sister, where are they? Yen Xiaozhu asked curiously. They seem to have retreated into the compound, strange pupil said. Without the fog in the compound, the harassment tactic could no longer be carried out. The strange pupil sisters did not expect to have nothing to do so soon. They did not know if it was because they had completed their mission. In any case, they first informed Gu Fei of the situation. Huh? How could this be? Gu Fei was stunned. They thought that the constant harassment outside the compound would force the enemy to strengthen their forces outside the compound. Therefore, they would mobilize the defensive forces inside the compound. Who knew that the enemy would retreat in order to advance and harass the people outside the compound? Fine, I'll simply withdraw the people outside the courtyard back into the courtyard so that you won't be able to harass them. Thus, Gu Fei and the sword demon smiled bitterly when they saw that the guards in the courtyard did not decrease but instead increased. Hey, your idea doesn't work. Gu Fei sent a message to the Han family young master. The meticulous preparation for an hour had failed so quickly. It really didn't seem like a strategy designed by the Han family young master. What's wrong? Han family young master asked. Gu Fei's words were like this. Nothing changed in the yard. Han family young master asked. Yes, there are more people. Gu Fei said. Be patient and watch, said the Han family young master. What else is there to see? Gu Fei was writing a message to the Han family young master when he suddenly realized that the confused players in the courtyard had started to move. As if they had heard a summon, the players that were scattered all over the courtyard suddenly began to move toward the front yard. As Gu Fei and the sword demon were in the backyard, most of their vision was blocked by the government office building. They didn't know what was happening in the front yard. Could it be the effect of the harassment? But the harassment had clearly forced the enemy back into the courtyard. Why did they suddenly seem to be redeploying? Of course it's the effect of the harassment, said the Han family young master. The harassment is to simulate you two experts. I really admire you two for having such a genius idea. Have you figured out what they're doing? They're on a mission. The purpose of the mission is to maintain the peace in the broken courtyard. They're not out to chase after you two. If the two of you were just harassing them from the outside, they would be more than happy. Only a ghost would be distracted by you two. Then now. The harassment is also a type of simulation, but it's not the two of you. It's the guilds in Xia Fog City, said the Han family young master. Guilds? Guilds again. After the disturbance you caused the day before, they're currently on high alert. This isn't a good time to disrupt their mission. Therefore, there's no way any guilds would be willing to make a move at this time. Working together won't work. But to really attract their attention, they have to make them think that a guild is going to attack them, said the Han family young master. Then? Have they created it? Gu Fei looked at the busy players in the courtyard. How would I know? You're at the scene, right? It's just 12 people harassing them. Gu Fei couldn't believe it. These aren't ordinary 12 people. They couldn't see the smile on the Han family young master's face. They were recommended by one of the 5 roaches, strange pupil. They're all famous players in Xia Fog City. It's hard to ambush them in the fog. We don't know the real identities of these 12 people, but those who are watching the fog should be able to see through them. In the game, a famous expert, in a certain sense, symbolizes a guild, or in other words, gives people the illusion that they are the symbol of a guild. Gu Fei suddenly understood. You're saying that these 12 experts with some background will make people think that their guilds are making a big move? That's right. That's the real reason why we invited strange pupil, said the Han family young master. As expected. Gu Fei sighed. This was a classic Han family young master's strategy. The pawns in the game didn't even know the true meaning of their move. They were at the mercy of the pawns. Poor strange pupil and her friends. Gu Fei only hoped that they wouldn't suffer any losses because of this. The Han family young master continued. They've misunderstood, so they're probably mobilizing a large number of people to defend the front gate. However, this illusion won't last long. Hurry up and do what you need to do. Okay. Gu Fei and Sword Demon replied. How's the situation on your side? Gu Fei asked the Sword Demon. There's someone near the sleeping assassin. I have to kill him, said the sword demon. Can't you go into stealth? You'll be exposed when you kill the assassin in stealth, said the sword demon. Oh, then hurry up. Once you're done, get on the wall and leave, said Gu Fei. Wait, I don't know if the assassin has anything related to the woodshed. Why don't I go down first and wait for my news? If there's nothing related, I'll leave and you can continue. If there's something related, you should get the information on my side first, said the sword demon. Makes sense. Gu Fei agreed. Wait for me. The sword demon didn't say anything else. He hurriedly threw down the long rope of the hook and slid down with a whoosh. When he landed and turned around, he saw that the person was already looking at him. The other person's attention was in the direction of the wall. He noticed it almost at the same time the sword demon threw the rope. The sword demon landed, turned around, and immediately activated fog ambush. He had already chosen a position on the wall. This landing point was within the charging range of fog ambush. That's fast, the person said in surprise. The sword demon also stared closely at the other person. A Grand Master of Combat. The sword demon thought that he was really sorry. A Grand Master of Combat's vitality wasn't strong or weak. They belonged to the middle class. They definitely couldn't resist the sword demon's killing move. He could only regrettably kill them. However, the serious sword demon never underestimated the enemy. Although fog ambush caught many people off guard with its high speed, the sword demon would still seriously use the disappear for 2 seconds effect every time. This time was no exception. After checking the distance between the two sides, the sword demon activated the skill's special effect and instantly disappeared. Even Gu Fei said that this disappear effect was extremely difficult to deal with. This made the sword demon full of confidence in this move. Gu Fei was already the strongest existence in his eyes. However, just as the sword demon's dagger was about to stab, the person suddenly made a move. His body suddenly sank, and his left hand opened from the bottom up. The sword demon was shocked and couldn't dodge in time. He watched as the opponent's left hand caught his dagger. The disappear state was immediately interrupted. The sword demon's face was full of surprise, but he also saw the same surprise on the opponent's face. He seemed to hear the opponent muttering, "Isn't it too fast?" The dagger was caught by the opponent and the disappear state was eliminated, but the skill wasn't completely interrupted. The sword demon saw the opportunity quickly and didn't hesitate at all. He continued to stab the dagger. However, the opponent's reaction wasn't slow either. He quickly realized that the attack didn't stop there. He immediately reached out with his right hand and held his left hand. Both arms stretched out together, firmly supporting the sword demon outside. The sword demon was very depressed. If it was any other profession, at this time, they would definitely be seriously injured. The hand was also a part of the body. Holding the dagger to resist the impact of the skill would also cause their HP to drop. However, the guy in front of him was a Grand Master of Combat. The Grand Master of Combat's weapon was a glove, so their hands were equivalent to weapons. Holding the dagger was equivalent to an ordinary player using their weapon to block the sword demon's dagger. Most of the damage was eliminated. The damage was eliminated, but the impact was not reduced. The sword demon's misty ambush was really powerful. It actually pushed the person forward. However, the moment the skill ended, the sword demon was in a dilemma. His dagger was still held tightly by the opponent. How could he continue to attack? Let go of the dagger and start again? He was even more reluctant. In desperation, the sword demon could only kick out. This kind of attack didn't do much damage. The sword demon only hoped that it could make the opponent retreat and let go of his dagger. Unexpectedly, the opponent turned 180 degrees and dodged the sword demon's kick. At the same time, he took a step back, his back against the sword demon's chest. His right hand released the dagger and held it under the sword demon's armpit. He arched his back and swung his arm. The sword demon only felt that the world was turning upside down. He had been thrown to the ground by the opponent. Oh no! The opponent's movements were smooth and skillful. This made the sword demon feel very bad. Could this guy be a martial artist like Qianli and Bai Shi? I'm afraid I'm not a match for this kind of person. The sword demon, who fell to the ground, looked up and met the opponent's inverted face. This person looks a little familiar. The sword demon suddenly thought. Chapter 481. That was close. Sword demon heard the Grandmaster of Combat, who was looking back at him, muttering, "What a novel skill. It can actually disappear in the middle of a dash. I wonder if I can block it if I touch you again. This guy. What is he blabbering on about instead of seizing the opportunity to kill me?" Sword demon was puzzled, but he didn't want to miss such an opportunity. He quickly rolled on the ground and got up, looking at the opponent with full vigilance. In the end, he saw that the opponent had no intention of making another move. He leaned lazily against a big tree behind him, looked at Sword Demon and said, "Didn't you notice that your skill's disappearance is different from stealth? After disappearing, there will still be a shadow." Shadow? Sword Demon was stunned. But he soon saw the opponent pat his head and continue, "Oh, I forgot. In this city, except in this courtyard, there will never be a shadow." Sword Demon finally understood. He had always been curious about the name of this skill, Fog Ambush, but it seemed to have nothing to do with fog and shadows. Now it seemed that it was a flawless skill in the fog. In this courtyard. Sword Demon looked up at the sky. The sun was blazing, and the shadows of every object on the ground were clear. And outside this courtyard, in the heavy fog, how could there be any shadow? This flaw of Fog Ambush was naturally covered up, and Sword Demon and Gu Fei were completely unaware that there was such a weakness. But the opponent noticed it the moment they fought, so he wasn't an ordinary character. "Who are you?" Sword Demon asked. "My name is Wind String," the opponent replied. "Where's the guy with you?" Wind String, one of the top 10 Grandmasters of Combat, was he also someone who saw flowers in the fog? Moreover, this person seemed to know Kung Fu like Qianli. This wouldn't be easy to deal with. Sword Demon thought in his heart, and had already sent an urgent signal to Gu Fei. "I met a Grandmaster of Combat, and he seems to know Kung Fu too." The first thing Gu Fei felt after receiving this news was happiness. He actually had another opponent to fight against. Compared to this, the assassination of Giordano was not even worth mentioning. Gu Fei immediately gave up on sneaking into the small woodshed and excitedly ran in the direction of the Sword Demon from the top of the wall. At the same time, he sent a message to the Sword Demon, "How are you?" "I'm fine." Sword Demon wondered why he was fine. Just based on the fact that the other party was able to neutralize his misty shadow ambush, he knew how powerful he was. He should not be a match for him, but the problem was that the other party did not seem to have any intention of making a move, so the problem of not being a match for him naturally did not exist. Knowing that he was no match for him, Sword Demon would not rashly challenge him. If the cooldown of Misty Ambush was over, he could try again. As for now, he would wait for Qianli to deal with him. Sword Demon was always full of confidence in Gu Fei. The distance between the two of them was not far. With Gu Fei's speed, he arrived very quickly. With a glance, he saw the Sword Demon who was on full alert in the courtyard below, as well as the Grandmaster of Combat who was leaning against a tree without moving. "I'll deal with him. You go check on the sleeping assassin." After Gu Fei sent a message to the Sword Demon, he flew down from the wall. "Watch my sword!" Gu Fei shouted in the air. It was rare for an opponent to appear. He did not want to kill the other party in one hit because of a sneak attack. Therefore, this slash not only reminded the other party, but also did not use double flame flash. Gu Fei actually wanted to confirm the other party's skills. After all, the person who said that the other party knew Kung Fu was Sword Demon. The Sword Demon was indeed an outstanding gamer, but in terms of Kung Fu, Wind String heard the shout and looked up. He saw Gu Fei swinging his sword in front of him, but he was still calm. His upper body bent down so that his head almost touched the ground, but his right leg was lifted. Sky drill. How is this possible? This was the most surprised Gu Fei had ever been since he entered the game. He was so surprised that he hesitated during the fight, and the kick landed on his lower jaw. Gu Fei flew out and hit the wall in the shape of a cross. That's right, it was sky drill. Gu Fei believed his eyes. This was what surprised him, because this sky drill was one of the moves in Gu Fei's kung fu. Although in the martial arts world, there weren't many sectarian views, each sect and clan would still keep a few special skills as a secret. This, soaring sky drill, was one of the Gu clan's leg techniques that wasn't taught to outsiders. Apart from the Gu clan, no one else would be able to use it. Our family, would there still be people who would play online games? This made Gu Fei feel very confused. Other than him, the people in his family who practiced kung fu were all uncles who were over 50 years old. It seemed like they were a group of people who would not have much interaction with online games. Gu Fei landed on the ground from the wall and steadied himself. At this time, Feng Xian had already stood up and turned around. Gu Xian. Gu Fei called out the other person's name. This Feng Xian was indeed a member of the Gu family, and he was the same generation as Gu Fei. This was his second uncle's child, and his name was Gu Xian. He was born in the same year and month as Gu Fei, but because he was born 4 days earlier, he became Gu Fei's cousin without any hesitation. This kid had shown his talent in kung fu earlier than Gu Fei, and he was even more outstanding. He was originally the person that the family had placed the most hope on. Unfortunately, no one was perfect. Compared to talent, this guy had a natural personality, which could be summed up in one word: laziness. There was no word that could describe Gu Xian so well. He was practically the spokesperson for this word. This guy was unbelievably lazy. If he could sit, he would never stand. If he could lie down, he would never sit. In order to not walk 200 meters, he was even willing to endure a day of hunger. To practice kung fu, one had to first train a strong body. This was an absolutely arduous and tiring process. It was simply an extravagant wish for a lazy person like him, who was tired from just taking a few steps, to engage in so many activities. It could be said that the elders in the family had exhausted all methods, but they were still unable to change this guy's laziness. They could only watch as this piece of unpolished jade became a piece of useless wood. They were all so angry that they beat their chests and stamped their feet. After more than 20 years, Gu Xian firmly occupied the first place in the list of useless wood in this generation of the Gu family. Gu Fei's other cousins, although none of them practiced martial arts, at least they had their own way of doing things in society. Only this guy had nothing to show for it. When the elders mentioned him, they would shake their heads and sigh. His father, who was also Gu Fei's second uncle, had been furious a long time ago and wanted to expel this useless person from the family. It was only after the other uncles dissuaded him that he gave up. Gu Fei had privately heard his uncles discuss that Gu Xian was no longer just in this generation of the Gu family. It was very likely that he was the most talented and most useless person in the history of the Gu family. How could this guy be so lazy? What on earth was he thinking? This was really a mystery in the history of the Gu family. The Gu family was well off, and they did not care about raising such a freeloader. And this guy was also well behaved. He would never do anything that would affect the mood of others. He became lazier and lazier, and finally reached a certain level. He was too lazy to even have some bad habits. He just quietly stayed at home all day. Speaking of this generation, the others had all gone out to study and pursue careers. Only he and Gu Fei, who practiced kung fu, stayed at home. The two of them were not strangers to each other. However, after Gu Fei left home, he had not seen this guy for a long time. He also did not contact him, because this guy was too lazy to even pick up the phone. Video sorcerer. It really is you. Gu Xian looked at Gu Fei and smiled. Gu Fei was not surprised that Gu Xian could tell that he was the video sorcerer. Although he was lazy, he could not erase Gu Xian's talent. Gu Fei still remembered that when he practiced kung fu as a child, this guy just lay lazily on the side and watched, and could often point out his problems. In terms of talent, this guy was definitely above him. Thinking of this, Gu Fei could not help but sigh. Like the elders in the family, he also felt that it was a pity for this cousin. You guys know each other? Sword Demon saw the signs. More than that, we are a family. Gu Fei said. Oh. Sword Demon let out a long sigh. With this kind of relationship, no wonder the other party did not make things difficult for him. Thinking of this, Sword Demon went to search for the sleeping assassin. As expected, Gu Xian did not have any intention of stopping him. Why are you so diligent in playing online games? Gu Fei asked. I also need to find some fun. Is there anything more suitable for me than this? Gu Xian said. This, you often have to run around, don't you find it annoying? Gu Fei said. It's annoying, so I always forcefully log off. Gu Xian said. Sword Demon, who was still listening to the conversation between the two, was shocked. He always forcefully logged off, which meant that the problem was quite serious. The system clearly stated that forcefully logging off could rewind the content, including experience, money, skill proficiency, equipment, and everything that a player could have. This guy always forcefully logged off, but he could still be one of the top 10. Although it was only the top 10 grandmasters of combat, it was still amazing. Gu Fei was not too surprised. For this lazy guy, running around between the offline area and the leveling area every day was definitely an incredible thing. Staring at a leveling area and forcefully going up and down every day, this could be his gaming style. What are you doing here? Gu Fei asked. Hee hee. Gu Xian laughed, they specifically found me to deal with someone. When I heard it was you, of course I immediately rushed over. You can't have forgotten that bullying you is a great pleasure for me, right? Gu Fei gritted his teeth. This really brought back some very bad memories. When he was younger, when Gu Xian was not lazy to a certain level, it was common for him to cheat him of food and drink. After that, as mentioned just now, when this guy pointed out the problem in the process of training, it was actually this guy mocking Gu Fei. Today, Gu Fei was at the level of stars in the Gu family, and Gu Xian was at the level of a passerby that no one cared about. But in his heart, Gu Fei was very clear that if Gu Xian was not so lazy, his current position would have been his. Chapter 482. Gu Fei was completely aware of Gu Xian's abilities. Although he didn't practice martial arts, it wasn't to say that he didn't know. It was just that because of the limitations of his body, the speed and power of his moves weren't on the same level as Gu Fei's. But right now, this was a game. The body's abilities had already become the game's attributes. In other words, the one who was limited was Gu Fei as a mage. Gu Fei was well aware of this, and Gu Xian seemed to be aware of it as well. Otherwise, with Gu Xian's geek physique in real life, Gu Fei could easily slap him to the ground for 3 days. If Gu Xian was aiming for a vital spot, he might even be slapped to death. Otherwise, why would Gu Xian cause Gu Fei less and less trouble in recent years? But in the game, everything was really hard to say. I say, what's wrong with you? Why did you choose a mage? Gu Xian said. I was careless. I can't change anymore. Gu Fei said. Stupid. Gu Xian scolded. At this time, Sword Demon had already returned from happily searching the sleeping assassin. He opened his palm and extended something in front of Gu Fei's eyes. I found a key. There really is something. Gu Fei was surprised. Could it be the one to open the door to the woodshed? Let's go try. Sword Demon suggested. Gu Fei looked at Gu Xian. What are you guys doing? Gu Xian asked while picking his ears. A mission, go to the woodshed over there. Gu Fei pointed in that direction. So far. Gu Xian was shocked. Sword Demon was even more shocked than him. He was so shocked that his eyes almost fell to the ground. The woodshed was estimated to be about 100 meters away. From this guy's tone, it seemed like he wanted him to walk to the moon. Gu Fei knew he would do this and didn't say anything. Gu Xian moved a few steps in pain and said, "Let's see if you can pass me first." Gu Fei immediately focused and prepared to fight. Sword Demon didn't understand. After Gu Fei arrived, the two of them began to compare. Sword Spectre already knew why the Grandmaster of Combat looked so familiar to him. It was because the Grandmaster of Combat looked similar to Gu Fei. After that, Gu Fei also said that they were indeed a family. Kinship could naturally be seen as a stronger form of friendship. Sword Spectre had already categorized the Grandmaster of Combat as one of their own. Who would have thought that the Grandmaster of Combat would still want to fight them? Gu Fei did not seem surprised at all and immediately prepared for battle. "Let's see if you've made any progress in these years." Gu Xian really looked like he was lecturing his little brother. He suddenly raised his fist and struck towards Gu Fei. Familiar, it was really too familiar. Gu Fei, who had studied the Gu family's martial arts for 20 years, was already familiar with every move of the family's martial arts. When Gu Xian swung his fist, of course, he would also use the Gu family's martial arts. How to parry, how to counterattack, and how to deal with the opponent, in an instant, 4 different paths appeared in Gu Fei's mind. It was like the repeated patterns in chess. "Okay, let's see how good your martial arts will be in this game where you don't need to train your body." With this thought in mind, Gu Fei chose the path that would lead to the quickest chaos and the most complex changes. He waved his hand and slapped it. As a result, when Gu Xian saw Gu Fei's response, his fist immediately changed. Gu Fei saw that Gu Xian's change was to move towards a simpler path. As expected, he had already seen through Gu Fei's intentions. However, since it was called a change, it would never be a simple path. The path that Gu Xian chose still contained more complicated changes. How could Gu Fei not notice it? He instantly changed his move to lead the way. This time, it's too late even if you want to change. Gu Fei understood, but he did not expect Gu Xian to change his move at the same time as Gu Fei. Moreover, he used the same move as Gu Fei. Fuck! Gu Fei immediately realized that something was wrong. However, as he had expected, it was too late for him to change his move. The two identical moves collided. Hence, the weaker one lost. Gu Fei was forced to retreat a few steps before he could stand firm. Tisk, tsk, tsk. Gu Xian shook his head with a mocking expression. Fuck! Too familiar. Gu Fei was enraged. He had only focused on familiarizing himself with martial arts moves, while Gu Xian had completely grasped Gu Fei's character. From the first punch, he had started scheming to lead Gu Fei into a situation where they had to use the same move. Gu Fei had completely ignored Gu Xian's character. With this guy's laziness, how could he be willing to play any complicated changes with Gu Fei? When he thought of this, he would naturally realize that this guy had ulterior motives and would naturally be on his guard. Unfortunately, it was too late for regrets. In this round, Gu Fei had already lost. Again. Gu Xian waved at Gu Fei, indicating for him to make the first move. Watch my sword. Gu Fei adjusted his mood and suddenly thrust his sword. Gu Xian saw it clearly and shouted, "Yo! He's using a big move." The sword flashed. It was the sword move that Gu Fei had used to defeat the 100 Lives Classic, growing in spring and growing in summer, harvesting in autumn and hiding in winter. To put it simply, this move was a set of combination skills. There were 4 parts, 2, 3, 4, or even just one of them could be used. Therefore, the changes were so complicated that even the Gu family members who were familiar with this move could not understand the true intentions of the swordsman. Not bad. Gu Xian was already a little dazzled by Gu Fei's sword flashes. This kind of eyesight as a martial artist could only be obtained through long periods of practice. Although Gu Xian was talented, his starting point was only slightly higher than the average person's. Without persistent practice, he naturally did not improve. At this time, there were no attributes in the game that could supplement this aspect. When faced with Gu Fei's tricks, he felt the same as the average person. However, Gu Xian's advantage was that he understood the moves. Although he could not see everything with his eyes, he could fill in the blanks with his brain. As he retreated, he waved his palm and actually managed to block Gu Fei's growing in spring. Just as he was about to block it, the sword flashes suddenly converged and abruptly gathered into a bundle. Ouch! Gu Xian screamed and hurriedly flipped backwards. The sword flashes swept past his nose. Gu Xian's right hand, which had been lying in ambush, reached out and gripped the blade tightly. Hee, looks like your current attributes can't fully unleash the power of growing in summer. Gu Xian laughed. However, Gu Fei only smiled and said, dual flame flash, flash. Fuck. This time, it was Gu Xian's turn to scream. He hurriedly let go of his sword and his body freefall to the ground, narrowly avoiding the flames that lingered on the dark night streamer. And Gu Fei did not take advantage of the situation to pursue with his sword. Gu Xian looked at the dark night streamer that was gradually losing its flames and quickly understood what Gu Fei was thinking. He faintly smiled and said, if growing in spring and growing in summer, harvesting in autumn and hiding in winter really had such a change, then this move would be even more amazing. Gu Fei withdrew his sword and looked at him. Gu Xian, who was lying on the ground, suddenly felt a bit dispirited. Gu Fei had a dedication and respect towards martial arts that he didn't have, so he didn't rely on the dual flame flash mixed within the sword move to continue his pursuit. In Gu Fei's heart, this was just a prank to scare him. In a competition between martial artists, this guy only wanted to rely on pure martial arts moves. It's so boring. Gu Xian muttered as he looked at the sun in the sky, which was rarely seen in Xiaowu City. You guys go, I'm going to sleep for a while. Gu Xian laid on the ground and didn't get up. What's your name? I'll add you. Gu Fei said. Feng Xian. Gu Xian said. Qianli drunk. Gu Xian clearly received a system notification at this time. What kind of lousy name is this? You named it yourself? Ha ha ha. Gu Xian laughed so hard that he almost rolled on the ground. Gu Fei didn't pay attention to him and dragged the sword demon to the woodshed. Who the hell is this person? The sword demon looked at Gu Xian as if he was looking at a weirdo. My cousin. Gu Fei was quite unwilling. Damn, he lost in those 4 days, and it was a defeat that he didn't even have a chance to get back at. He's also very strong. The sword demon sighed. To be honest, he didn't know who won or lost, but he felt that the two seemed to be about the same. You can even deal with him. Gu Fei said. How is that possible? The sword demon still had self-awareness. Stealth, backstab. Gu Fei taught him. Stealth can work. The sword demon was surprised. Of course, how could he feel the killing intent? Gu Fei said. This kind of miracle that was produced by the body's natural reaction, consciousness, intuition, aura, and other complex things was something that Gu Xian, who didn't practice and only used his brain at most, couldn't have. Gu Fei was 100% sure. Is that so? The sword demon said as he looked back at Gu Xian and suddenly shouted, someone's coming. Gu Fei hurriedly looked back and saw a group of people coming from the side of the building. It was the players who were looking at things in the fog. Just as the young master of the Han family had said, they had to move quickly. It was very easy to see through the fog that there were guilds attacking, but it was just a misunderstanding. Perhaps they would have noticed it even before they had all gathered. At this moment, it seemed that the Han family young master's judgment was indeed correct. Let's go. Gu Fei dragged the sword demon and ran towards the small woodshed. The government building was divided into two sides and people had already arrived. However, Gu Fei estimated the distance and felt that with his and the sword demon's speed, they could still rush into the small woodshed. "Where's your cousin?" At this critical moment, the sword demon's loyalty could be seen. He only met him once, but because he was a friend of a friend, he already saw him as his own brother. "Don't worry about him, he definitely has a way," Gu Fei urged the sword demon. On Gu Xian's side, the people who were looking at things in the fog arrived in a moment. The leader was one of the core members of the group. Seeing that Gu Fei and the sword demon were running away while Feng Xian was lying here comfortably, he was furious. "Feng Xian, didn't you say that I'll leave this side to you? How can you let them run away?" Gu Xian didn't move and just looked up at the person in front of him. "What can I do? I only realized that he's my relative when I came over." The person was startled and couldn't find any words to refute. Fuck. There was a hot-tempered brother beside this person who slashed at Gu Xian with his sword. Chapter 483. The broadsword slashed down. Gu Xian saw that he would be killed if he continued to lie down, so he unwillingly got up. This move was much faster than what everyone expected. The guy who was stuck to the ground like mud suddenly bounced up like a spring, and in the blink of an eye, he was already in midair. The sword-wielding player was shocked. His sword was already under the opponent's body. When he tried to adjust, his vision turned black, and the opponent's foot was already deeply imprinted on his forehead. He wanted to retaliate, but he did not expect the opponent's attack to be faster than his. His forehead was immediately followed by a second kick. Compared to the person involved, the others felt that this was an exciting performance. The Grand Master of Combat who bounced up, in the blink of an eye, had already taken a few steps towards the sword-wielding warrior. After his body fell to a certain distance, he threw a few more punches. The Grand Master of Combat who witnessed this scene was even more mesmerized. So it was possible to perform heavy punches, hooks, and bouncing kicks like this in the air? Wait a minute. Could it be done like this as well? The poor warrior suffered a flurry of punches and kicks. At the last moment before Gu Xian landed on the ground, Gu Xian grabbed both of his shoulders and easily pulled him down. Gu Xian used the momentum to stay in the air for a while the warrior was quickly and cleanly thrown to the ground. Is this a hugging throw? Is it a hugging throw? Amidst the discussion of the surrounding players, the warrior who was slammed painfully pointed his middle finger at his brothers who had forgotten about him, and turned into a white light. Ah! Only then did the crowd realize that this was a battlefield, and not an official Grandmaster of Combat battle demonstration. One of their companions had already been defeated by the opponent using a never-before-seen combo attack. At this time, Gu Xian landed slowly, and the crowd, who had just woken up from a dream, quickly surrounded him. So troublesome. Gu Xian looked up at the sun in the sky, a little reluctant to leave. Then, he saw a flash of white light, and he disappeared. Huh? Who did it? The core member of the guild who led the team was also considered an expert, but he did not realize who was killed, and was very confused. Everyone was confused, and looked at each other. I didn't do it, they said one after the other. Finally, someone reacted and pointed at the center of the arena. Could it be, could it be, could it be? Could it be what? Everyone looked at him. Did he forcefully log off? The person finally finished his sentence. The crowd was seething again. They finally realized that this expert had an incomparable temperament. Compared to forcefully logging out, isn't it better to die once? The core leader looked at his brothers with a puzzled expression. Everyone nodded. Compared to the unknown horror of forcefully logging off, losing a level was nothing. This was the consensus among the players. Moreover, the stronger the player, the less they would dare to forcefully log off. What if a rare skill was reloaded? What if an exquisite piece of equipment was reloaded? It was not as if such a thing had never happened before. With such a large group of players, tragedies such as the one mentioned above had already happened and come out to complain. Therefore, everyone was even more careful. Every day, before playing the game, they would check to see if they owed electricity bills, paid their internet bill on time, and if there was a fire at home. Otherwise, if they were forced to log off due to these objective reasons, wouldn't it be a loss? But now, right in front of them, a member of the top 10 Grandmasters of Combat had forcefully logged off despite being surrounded. What kind of spirit was this? It's probably an accident. Everyone was discussing. They could not believe that someone had this kind of spirit. It should be. The core leader said maturely. Everyone wait. Everyone nodded. If it was an accident, then after eliminating the possibility, the opponent would definitely rush into the game to check on himself. In the end, after a few minutes, a few people looked at each other awkwardly. Maybe he won't come. Probably, should we wait? On the other side, Sword Demon followed Gu Fei as he ran and looked back to see the entire situation. Gu Xian's ability to get up and defeat the warrior in seconds made Sword Demon once again confirm that he was definitely not this person's opponent in a head-on fight. After that, he calmly logged off after being surrounded by the crowd. This calmness made Sword Demon even more certain that this person was definitely not a proper online player. When the two rushed to the door of the small woodshed, the group of people who were originally closer to them were surrounding the place where Gu Xian had forcefully logged off, and the group of people who had come out from the other side of the government building were even closer. The door of the woodshed was so rotten that Gu Fei felt that he could smash it with one palm. But when he pushed the door, it did not open. Gu Fei had already noticed the rusty keyhole on the door. This push was just to test it. Key! Gu Fei shouted. The sword ghost stepped forward and smoothly inserted the key. With a twist and a push, the door opened with a squeak. The two of them hurriedly rushed in and closed the door behind them. The entire woodshed was as dilapidated as the door. There were a few holes in the walls and roof, causing the room to at least have some dim light. The two of them quickly scanned the interior of the room and walked towards a hole where they could observe the outside of the room. Then, they stopped at the same time. They shouldn't be able to come in, right? Gu Fei said. Probably, Sword Demon said. Since the door was locked, then according to normal game common sense, even if the door was dilapidated, it was impossible to enter without a key. It was with this inference that Gu Fei rushed into the woodshed with Sword Demon without hesitation. At that time, throwing the flying hook and climbing over the wall was a little urgent. Gu Fei was not very confident, let alone Sword Demon who was far less skilled than Gu Fei. Therefore, Gu Fei decided to hide in the woodshed for the time being. As for how to escape later, he could only think about it later. I'll keep an eye on it. You search the house. Sword Demon continued to walk toward the hole. Although he deduced that the other party could not open the door, he was still a little nervous. After all, this game was still a little different. Gu Fei began to carefully inspect the house. Not long after, he heard the sound of knocking on the door. The knocking soon turned into a strong impact. The whole woodshed seemed to be shaking, and dust kept falling down. However, the dilapidated wooden door still stood. Gu Fei and Sword Demon were finally completely relieved. The system's own things were awesome. Sword Demon no longer stared outside the house. There were more and more people outside, and then they were helpless against a small broken door. Sword Demon turned around and checked the house with Gu Fei while saying, "Do you think they'll search for the sleeping assassin? They'll find the key." Gu Fei said. That assassin shouldn't be here for the first time, right? It can't be that no players have come here before, right? If they have, I think everyone will go up and search after seeing such an NPC. However, we can still find the key today, which means that the key may be a new item and not the only one. Sword Demon was worthy of being an online game veteran and understood the psychology of ordinary players very well. What you said makes sense, but the key didn't indicate this room, right? Gu Fei said. Indeed it didn't. However, they can't come in, but we can. They will naturally deduce that we have the key. If someone has such a strange key in their hands, they will definitely come and try. Sword Demon said. But no one has tried yet. They probably don't have it right now. Gu Fei said. I hope so. Whatever, let's hurry up and search. Since we're here, we can't get out for a while. Gu Fei said. Outside the small firewood house, the guild leader Three Sighs Flowing Maple had also personally arrived. Originally, he led the main force in the front yard to prepare to build a strong line of defense against a large-scale guild invasion. However, after quickly discovering that it seemed to be a misunderstanding, he immediately dismissed the people and returned to their original positions. The two teams that passed through the left and right side of the government building were actually just returning to their original positions. Because Gu Fei and the others broke through from the backyard, this was a heavily guarded area. However, as soon as they arrived, they saw the two suspicious people, Gu Fei and Sword Demon, which surprised them. Originally, they thought that there were a few people guarding this place, including the confident Wind String who had volunteered himself. Everyone thought that even if Gu Fei and Sword Ghost came in at this time and they couldn't stop them, they would at least send a message. Who would have thought that they would bump into Wind String without a word? In the end, not only did he let go of his opponent, he even killed one of their members. After Three Sighs Flowing Maple came over, the core leader first scolded Wind String. Relative? Three Sighs Flowing Maple listened to the relationship between the two and was a bit confused. He then looked at Drifting. Drifting smiled bitterly. I'm not close enough to know his relative. Drifting and Gu Fei weren't that close, and the number of times they met could be counted. For example, when Sword Demon saw Gu Fei, he could see that he was similar to Gu Fei, but Drifting was far from that level. Are they inside now? Three Sighs Flowing Maple felt that there was no point in discussing the blood relationship between the two. Everyone nodded. Three Sighs Flowing Maple looked at the keyhole on the door that couldn't be destroyed. Do they have the key? Or is it the legendary thief's pick-lock skill? Someone guessed. That skill seems to be thief's, right? Someone said. Sword Demon is an assassin, right? Three Sighs Flowing Maple asked Drifting. Drifting nodded. Where did they get the key? Three Sighs Flowing Maple was surprised. Maybe they snuck into the government hall 2 days ago to get the key. Someone made a wrong judgment. That makes sense. His wrong judgment was acknowledged by others. His mission is to assassinate Giordano. Why is he in this small broken room? Three Sighs Flowing Maple mumbled. He walked around the room and saw the hole. He hurriedly went over to take a look. After Sword Demon left the hole, Gu Fei was still paying attention to this place. When he noticed that the light in the hole was blocked, he immediately knew what was going on. He grabbed something and threw it. Fuck! Three Sighs Flowing Maple shouted and took a few steps back. The surrounding players looked at him and lowered their heads, hiding the smile on their faces. The guild leader of the largest guild in Cloud Fog City had his face turned black after being slapped by a handful of black ash. Chapter 484. Three Sighs of Flowing Maple quickly wiped his face, but in the end, his black face was smeared with dirt. Everyone continued to hold back their laughter. Those who had more amazing endurance clenched their teeth and said, "Go wash up. Hurry up and think of a way. We definitely can't let them escape." Three Sighs of Flowing Maple roared hysterically before hurrying off. Everyone looked at each other. In their eyes, their guild leader was always calm and collected. Who would have thought that such a small matter that didn't affect the overall situation would provoke his anger? The human heart was the hardest thing to understand. Three Sighs of Flowing Maple temporarily left, and the group of people continued to study the hidden lock on the wooden door. After confirming that no one in the guild had the legendary unlocking skill, everyone began to discuss the problem of the key. With so many people in such a big guild, there were still some capable people. Someone quickly pointed out that when they arrived, Gu Fei and Sword Demon had left from a certain place, and Gu Xian was lying in a certain place. Coincidentally, there was an NPC assassin sleeping there. Was there a key? There was no need to guess if there was a key or not. That NPC was always sleeping there. They would know once they went to take a look. Immediately, a few people ran over there. Gu Fei, who had shaken off 3 sighs of flowing maples dust, was peeking through the hole and noticed the situation. Their reaction is so fast. They seem to have already discovered that there's something wrong with that assassin. Sword Demon was also startled. Then what do we do? What else can we do? Pray that the key hasn't refreshed yet, so they'll just think that there's nothing strange there. Gu Fei said. This quest seems quite complicated. I believe that the quest item won't refresh so quickly. Sword Demon replied. As the reality became more and more consistent with Gu Fei's analysis, Sword Demon already began to believe that this quest didn't appear on the list, but still existed. He was different from Gu Fei's indifference. After all, he was a veteran gamer, so he more or less cared. And, I hope so. Did you find anything? Gu Fei said. This is the only place left. Sword Demon looked ahead. The small firewood room had been searched. At this time, the Sword Demon was staring at the firewood piled high in the corner. Because it was a VR game. These things could all be moved. Searching this kind of place was actually quite tiring. It was not like before, when you moved the mouse up and found that the shape had changed. Now, you had to be a laborer. Everything outside the woodshed was as Gu Fei and Sword Demon had hoped. The players who touched the sleeping assassin did not find anything. They could only continue to rack their brains to do mental work. Meanwhile, Gu Fei and Sword Demon were sweating profusely as they did physical work. Finally, the Sword Demon, who had been working hard to move firewood without complaint, made a discovery and shouted excitedly, "Got it!" On the other side, Gu Fei quickly dropped what he was doing and came over. He found that there was a cellar under the pile of firewood that Sword Demon had moved away. The two quickly cleared the firewood on top and then were stunned. The cellar was a cellar, but it was a locked cellar. Sword Demon squatted down and pulled it. The lock was very strong. He wanted to take the key to the door of the firewood room to try, but the size didn't match. "Let's look," Gu Fei said as he rummaged through the pile of firewood. The other places had been carefully searched. If there was a key, it could only be in this pile of firewood. Unfortunately, luck had left them this time. The pile of firewood was thoroughly searched, but there was nothing to show for it. How do we do this? Gu Fei opened the diary and looked for clues in it. The sword ghoul was so tired that he was lying on the ground, breathing heavily. He looked at the ceiling and suddenly had a thought. Could it be that the 2 keys are also on the sleeping assassin, but these 2 keys respawned at different times, so the players picked them up and messed things up? That's why I can't get 2 keys at once. That's possible. Gu Fei nodded, then said, but in the near future, no one will come to this place except for players looking at it through the fog. If there really is a key, it's likely that it's in their hands. Unless the key's refresh time is many days, and it's picked up by someone else before they start their quest, oh no. The sword ghost suddenly shouted. It looks like we didn't discover anything during the search just now, but now that we've discovered something suspicious, we'll definitely be discussing it in the guild. With so many people in the guild, there's no doubt that someone has discovered this NPC. Moreover, the person who happened to find the key is probably rushing over right now with the key. That's not necessarily true. Gu Fei said, I've learned about the situation of this courtyard. Before the mission began, the only clear and transparent space in Xia Fog City was their largest trading market, but the backyard space was limited. Look at the flowers, grass, and trees. Although the environment is good, it is not a square, and it is far from the main entrance, so it has always been deserted. Even after the mission was occupied, there was no one guarding the backyard. It was not until I climbed over the wall in the backyard that people began to set up here. What you said can only guarantee that there will not be many people who have a chance to touch this key, but in the past few days, after all, there are people who are looking through the fog here. I promise you, if such an NPC is found, there will definitely be a lot of players who will come to find out. Sword Demon said. So, it is really possible for people who are looking through the fog to get this key? Gu Fei said. Very likely, and maybe they are already here, unless they happen to be offline at this moment. Wait, if they find this key, of course they will think about how to use it, and then, this small woodshed with a lock is a pretty obvious target, right? Gu Fei said. Without waiting for Sword Demon to answer, Gu Fei had already begun to look at the small woodshed. Although the system has always been very shameless, isn't it a bit too much to hide a cellar so thoroughly under the pile of firewood? Sword Demon turned his head. There was no need to discuss the system's shamelessness. He understood the meaning of Gu Fei's words. You mean, when this guy touched the key, he also found that it was used to open this woodshed, and he also found this cellar. He suspected that there was something good inside, but unfortunately, he couldn't open it and couldn't get it, so he used the firewood pile to hide it? Gu Fei nodded. That's why he buried it without leaving any clues. Yes. This is super possible. Sword Demon understood the psychology of all kinds of players very well. If this is the case, this guy will definitely not come out at this time. I think this person is so scheming, he will definitely come out at this time. Why? Because the longer we stay inside, the more likely we are to find the cellar he hid. Moreover, he will worry that we are actually coming for this cellar, so he will be more eager to pull us out and clean us up, right? Gu Fei said. Then isn't his action a bit too slow? So it is very likely, as you said, that he is not online right now, Gu Fei said. Sword Demon was silent for 3 seconds and said, so after analyzing so much, what conclusion did we reach? We are safe for the time being, but we have to leave as soon as possible. Right now is the peak period for players online, and this person may come at any time, Gu Fei said. Leaving is a bit difficult. Sword Demon glanced out of the hole again and was surrounded. Come, let's clean up here first. Gu Fei pointed to the cellar. That guy is online and hears that someone entered the firewood room. He will definitely have doubts and come to take a look. If he finds that the cellar has been touched, he will probably strengthen some defensive measures, which is not good for us. If he finds that it has not been touched, the situation will remain the same, which should be better. Sword Demon said as he moved the firewood, what if he remembers the original shape he moved out? Gu Fei was speechless. If he is really that careful, then I am convinced. The two quickly piled up the firewood, hid the cellar, and clapped their hands. Right now, there was no hope of opening the cellar, and there was a danger that someone could open the door and enter at any time, so there was no time to waste here. It was necessary to leave as soon as possible. Both of them were very busy. Gu Fei observed the others' movements from the hole to see if there were any opportunities to take advantage of. Sword Demon was describing the situation to Han family young master in detail to see if there could be any help from the outside. Won't they come out if they die? Han family young master always wanted to taunt them first. Sword Demon, who was used to this, ignored it calmly and continued to talk about business. Right now, I estimate that there are about 300 people outside. The number of people observed from the small hole was limited. Sword Demon estimated based on the density of people's positions and his memory of the outside space. Let Qianli kill them all. Han family young master continued to taunt. Do you have any ideas? Sword Demon continued to ignore him. Not at the moment. You can't explain the situation clearly. I have to at least observe from the overall situation. Han family young master said. There is no time. Sword Demon said, the other party may open the door with the key at any time. If it really doesn't work, let's forcefully go offline first. I think this method is feasible. Gu Fei interrupted. This was actually also a taunt from Han family young master. Who would have thought that Gu Fei would agree with it? Han family young master and Sword Demon were both shocked. But forcefully going offline was something Sword Demon would never consider even if he was beaten to death. How about this? Qianli will go out and attract attention. You take the opportunity to sneak out. 1 dead is better than 2 dead. Han family young master suggested again. This method works too. Gu Fei nodded again. Absolutely not. If Sword Demon was asked to attract the firepower to cover their escape, he would do it without hesitation. But if others were to sacrifice for him, he would feel bad. Then let's just kill them directly. Kill as many as you can. If you can rush out, then do it. If you can't, then die. Gu Fei began to simplify the complicated problem. Agreed. Who says we're definitely going to die? Sword Ghost's blood was boiling. We will definitely die, but it depends on how many we can kill before we die. Gu Fei was not interested in imaginary miracles. He was fully aware of the extent of his strength in this situation. Do you want to rush out without dying? Unless you have unlimited mana. Okay. You two just wait. There will be a chance. Han family young master suddenly threw out a sentence. Butterfly knot, there is not much plot, but a lot of dialogue. Is there anyone who likes to read the dialogue more than the plot? In fact, the plot is also hidden in the dialogue. Chapter 485. Could it be another arrangement? Gu Fei and Sword Demon looked at each other and thought. The Han family young master's thoughts were hard to guess, but compared to this, it was even harder to get his true intentions out of his mouth. The two of them could only stand guard in front of the hole, looking at each other and waiting patiently. Not long after, something unexpected happened. The players guarding outside the woodshed suddenly became noisier than before, as if something had happened. Come and look. Sword Spectre, who was observing the situation from the hole, hurriedly called out to Gu Fei and gave him a spot to observe the situation as well. With the noise, the other side clearly began to move, and many people began to return to the front yard along the way. What happened? Gu Fei looked at Sword Demon, puzzled. It's probably the arrangement that young master mentioned. Sword Demon said. What did he arrange this time? Gu Fei scratched his head. I don't know, but in short, it was as he expected. Sword Demon said. When will this guy make a mistake? Gu Fei said resentfully. Human's mood was subtle. Although at this time, if the Han family young master made a mistake, it would be a disaster for Gu Fei and Sword Demon. This guy always calculated everything, and it couldn't help but strongly stimulate the reverse psychology of humans. Gu Fei really wanted to see how this guy would react after making a fatal disaster-type mistake, even if this mistake would cost him. However, it seems that not all of them have left. Sword Demon announced bad news. This is normal. Gu Fei said, no matter what kind of trick the other side used, they won't completely give up on us, 2 turtles in a jar, right? But now I'm afraid this is our only chance. Sword Demon said. So, charge. Gu Fei said. Yes. Sword Demon nodded. Don't get caught up in the fight. Pull away from them as fast as you can and try to get over the wall. Gu Fei wasn't worried about the Sword Demon's speed. He was only worried that he wouldn't be agile enough to climb the wall and would be knocked down. Understood, said the Sword Demon. Okay. Gu Fei reached out and pulled the broken door of the woodshed. At this time, in the front yard of the government compound, or more accurately, at the front yard gate, a real battle broke out. This time, it wasn't some fake harassment, but a genuine attack from a guild that didn't see eye to eye. Where there were people, there would be conflicts. A guild without disputes meant that it was an inconspicuous passerby guild. It was impossible for one of the top guilds in Xia Fog City to not have any enemies. This was something that Han family young master had already found out from Strange Eye. So this time, his strategy wasn't to spread out like in Waterside City, but to find a target and attack. The method was the same. Han family young master still sent a letter with 1 gold coin to the core members of these hostile guilds. If he just randomly said that there was a loophole in the government compound and that they were welcome to visit, the other party might ignore it as a prank. However, the tone of the Han family young master's letter was very different. It was like the tone of the group that had caused a ruckus 2 days ago. The content of the letter was even more unscrupulous, revealing his understanding of the operation that day, making it impossible for anyone to doubt his identity. Following that, there was only one theme: we are going to cause a ruckus soon. You are welcome to come and cause a ruckus together. The news that the government compound had been tormented by someone a few days ago had already spread throughout Xiaoyu City. The young master of the Han family believed that these fools must have felt regretful that they hadn't taken advantage of the situation that day. Since that day, they had strengthened their defenses. The more they saw it, the more regretful they felt. And now, this letter from the Han family young master was equivalent to giving them a pill of regret, giving them another chance. Of course, it was impossible for the guilds to attack so recklessly. They needed time to see if it was really as the letter said. Therefore, the Han family young master found extras like Strange Pupil, as well as the 2 main characters, Gu Fei and Sword Demon. The consequences of their actions would fall into the eyes of these guilds. There was only one truth that appeared in their eyes: Foggy Eyes was indeed being harassed again. A chance. The people who were the most unwilling to let go of an opportunity were often the people who had missed an opportunity before. Since the letter had been confirmed, there was nothing to hesitate about. They should seize the opportunity and do it. Therefore, the formal battle between guilds officially began. Foggy Eyes had just thought that the harassment from the guilds was a misunderstanding, but suddenly, he realized that there were really guilds attacking, and they were all characters that were not on good terms with their own guilds. While he was surprised, he could not help but sigh, why are these old opponents so smart today? Both real and fake. The guild leader of Foggy Eyes, 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple, was still washing his face. When he heard the news, he could not care less about cleanliness and rushed to the front yard. How could there be so many lines of dialogue when the 2 sides that had never been on good terms met? At this time, they had already become one. A large portion of Foggy Eyes' manpower had been placed in the broken woodshed in the backyard. The situation was extremely unfavorable, and it was necessary to send reinforcements as soon as possible. There was no need to think too much. Therefore, the defense of the woodshed in the backyard loosened just like that. How could the 2 sides that were fighting in the front yard know that in their desperate battle, some people were actually hiding such a small goal? The moment Gu Fei opened the door to the woodshed, he had already sent out a high-damage sword skill with double flame flash. As he expected, there was someone blocking the door. With such a sword skill, a small empty space was immediately cleared. Following that, Sword Demon valiantly rushed out, using the level-skipping skill, Misty Ambush. With high speed and strong impact, it was even more ferocious than the most terrifying skill, Charge, in a straight line. Once the skill was used, Sword Demon rushed out in a straight line, and in the blink of an eye, he was already out of the circle. The surrounding players turned their heads in shock, but what greeted them was fire. Gu Fei had already teleported behind Sword Demon, and at this time, he could act as a cover. The fire spread out, and there was another small empty space. Gu Fei then pointed at his feet. 1,000 layers of flames of the cinder tree, rise. He loudly chanted. Dodge! The 2 turned around and ran. Fuck! It's fake. The crowd that was startled by the 1,000 layers of flames of the cinder tree shouted and wanted to chase after them when they saw the fire. We've been told countless times that people who don't understand Gu Fei's magic will suffer greatly. Everyone had thought that the skills were fake, but as soon as they stepped onto this land, they suddenly discovered that it was already a land of fire. The flames were more intense than anything they had ever seen before. Characters with weak health could only become a speck of white light in the midst of the flames. On the other hand, Gu Fei and the Sword Ghost, who were known for their speed, were already running several meters away. Gu Fei pulled out 2 loops of rope and handed one to Sword Demon. Hold it well. Sword Demon knew that they were pulling away to buy time to climb over the wall, and he clearly needed more time to climb over the wall, so he kept looking back at the distance. When it was about time, he nodded at Gu Fei. It's done. Okay. Gu Fei didn't hesitate. The 2 claws in his hands shot out one after the other, accurately grabbing onto the top of the wall. Go! Gu Fei yelled. He pulled the rope and flew into the air. Sword Demon wasn't as free and easy as him. He ran to the bottom of the wall, pulled the rope tight, and stepped on the wall. The 2 climbed up the wall, one in front and one behind. The enemies on the ground surged over like a tide. Gu Fei's climbing proficiency was far above Sword Demon's. He used all his strength, but when he reached the top of the wall, Sword Demon had only climbed a third of the way up. Seeing the enemies get closer and closer, Gu Fei looked at Sword Demon. He discovered that this kind of top expert in the game didn't have any weaknesses. For example, his mental fortitude was definitely strong enough. If it were the people who came with him the other day, they would have been frightened to the point where they didn't know what to do in the face of such a powerful enemy. If they were faced with such a scene, Gu Fei reckoned that they would have already fallen down from the trembling. Unlike the Sword Ghost, who was still so calm and composed, meticulously climbing up the wall. But calmness was calmness. The enemies were closing in, and it was also a fact that Sword Demon was a bit slow. Several archers had already drawn their bows and started shooting. Hold on! Gu Fei yelled, swinging his hands. Pa pa! 2 arrows suddenly fell to the ground. The archers could clearly see that the mage on top of the wall had thrown something that actually knocked down their arrows. Damn, it's not that exaggerated. Everyone was stunned. How lucky. I hit too. Gu Fei muttered in his heart. This was an unexpected performance from Gu Fei. He threw a total of 5 meat-cutting knives. He just wanted to try his luck. After all, the archer's arrows were too fast, and Gu Fei's throwing hidden weapons was too slow, which greatly increased the difficulty of estimating. Gu Fei had no confidence at all. He just wanted to try, but he didn't expect to bet on 2 out of 5. His luck was still good. As for the remaining 3 arrows, he missed one. Sword Demon dodged one arrow and took the other. He was already a step away from the top of the wall. When the second wave of archers came, Gu Fei could reach it with his sword and easily resolved it. Sword Demon grabbed the top of the wall and flipped over. He pulled out the arrow stuck behind him and let out a long sigh. That was close. Let's go. Gu Fei put away the flying hook and placed it on the other end. The 2 of them calmly slid down. Their infiltration this time had come to an end. As for the guild war in the front yard, it seemed like it had nothing to do with the 2 of them anymore. What do you think is in that cellar? At this time, the 2 of them were walking on the street and had already begun to discuss the continuation of their mission. They completely ignored the thousands of people over there who were risking their lives for them. This was the fate of minor characters. I don't know. Gu Fei said. What did a cellar have to do with the assassination of Giordano? Anyway, we won't know anything if we don't open it. Sword Demon said. Where can we find the key? Gu Fei muttered. Shall we go back and touch the sleeping assassin's body? The Sword Ghost suggested. Is there any other way? Unlock skill. I don't know if anyone knows it right now. Sword Demon said. Chapter 486. Lockpicking skill. Gu Fei repeated Sword Demon's words. It's a common skill in online games that belongs to the thief class. It specializes in opening locks without keys. The higher the skill level, the more locks you can open. Sword Demon knew that Gu Fei was a noob, so he explained in detail. What about in this game? Gu Fei asked. It's a skill that belongs to the thief class. Sword Demon said. Being a godly thief and picking locks, it really is a good match. Gu Fei said, what? Gu Fei saw that Sword Demon had something to say. Currently, the skills outside of the skill tree are either from equipment or scrolls. I've seen the lockpicking skill scroll once, so it's obvious that it exists on the market. If that's the case, I think that Thin Waist Dance has a high chance of having this skill. Sword Demon said. Gu Fei nodded his head, that makes sense. He thought of Thin Waist Dance, who was so greedy that she even wanted to learn teleportation. If she found a skill scroll for her own class, she definitely wouldn't miss it. Let me ask. Gu Fei said as he immediately sent a message to Thin Waist Dance. Thin Waist, do you know how to unlock? Of course. From these two simple words, Gu Fei felt a wave of pride wash over him. Thin Waist Dance's proud expression seemed to appear in front of him. Then let's unlock. Gu Fei didn't waste any time. Where? Thin Waist Dance didn't hesitate. Fog City. What kind of place is that? A main city. Wait a moment. Where are you? Gu Fei asked. Nonsense, where else could I be? Cloud City. Yeah. Gu Fei couldn't bear to see it. Coming from Cloud City, it was a journey of many hours, just to open a lock. For those who couldn't understand, imagine your house was in Beijing, and the key was locked, so you found a locksmith from Shanghai to open the lock. Alright. Before Gu Fei could finish hesitating, Slim Waist Dance sent him another message. What's good? Gu Fei was confused. Go to the mailbox and get a scroll. Thin Waist Dance said. Gu Fei did receive a system notification saying that he had a new mail, but he didn't pay much attention to it. He was now a celebrity in the game, so he would receive letters from strangers from time to time. Most of them were boring, so Gu Fei didn't pay much attention to them anymore. Scroll? A lockpicking scroll? Gu Fei knew that there were two types of skill scrolls. One was the learning type, which allowed one to learn a skill after using it. The other was the consumption type, which allowed one to release a skill after using it. Where did you get the unlock scroll? It's a teleportation scroll. Thin Waist Dance said. Huh? Gu Fei didn't understand. After you get it, record the coordinates over there and send it back to me. Then I can use it to teleport over. Thin Waist Dance said. That works too. Gu Fei exclaimed. Even the Sword Demon had the same reaction. This time, it wasn't that the two of them were ignorant, it was because the teleportation scroll was too high-end. It was just like how commoners wouldn't have any thoughts or intentions towards private planes. So you're saying that she'll be able to come over immediately? Gu Fei and the Sword Demon had already changed their route. Originally, they were going to return to the tavern to discuss their next step, but they didn't expect things to progress so quickly. Don't tell me we're going back immediately. Sword Demon said. That's not a good idea. Gu Fei felt bad for repeatedly interrupting their peaceful life. Let's wait for her to come over first. Sword Demon said. The two of them went to the mailbox to collect the goods. Halfway through, they received a message from the Han family young master. Warriors, are you out yet? I'm out. The two of them replied. What did you find? Han family young master asked. When the Sword Demon said this, the Han family young master immediately said, Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up. Take advantage of the commotion over there and kill them. What did you do to them? Gu Fei and the Sword Demon felt a chill run down their spine. They're in the middle of a guild war. Don't you want to use this chance? Han family young master said. Didn't you say that the guild couldn't be used this time? Gu Fei said. I'm too lazy to explain such complicated things to people with your IQ. Han family young master said. This kind of guild war won't end so quickly, but it won't last until tomorrow. So can you two please hurry up? Han family young master said. Gu Fei and the sword demon, who were strolling leisurely on the streets, immediately ran over to the mailbox. They quickly opened it and took out a teleportation scroll. Although the two of them hadn't used it before, with a veteran like Sword Demon, it only took him 3 seconds to figure out how to use it. Do you want to record it here or wait until we enter the woodshed? Sword Demon asked. Gu Fei looked at him in surprise. There's a mailbox in the woodshed? Oh right. Sword Demon was ashamed. Even a wise man would sometimes make a mistake. He quickly recorded the coordinates and sent it back. Hurry up. Gu Fei sent a message to Thin Waist Dance. What are you rushing me for? Thin Waist Dance replied. But as soon as the message was sent, at the coordinates that Sword Demon had just recorded, a white light suddenly shot out from the ground and instantly formed a formation. The light rose up and illuminated the surroundings. The figure of Thin Waist Dance in the center of the light gradually became clear. Hi! As the light of the formation faded, Thin Waist Dance had already stepped out and greeted the two people in front of her. Let's go open the lock. Gu Fei said to her. Why are you in such a hurry? Thin Waist Dance was very calm. She first looked around and said in surprise, what is this place? Gu Fei obviously knew what she was surprised about. This place is like that, it's very foggy. Let's go, we're in a hurry. Why are you in a hurry? Thin Waist Dance said. I'm about to go offline. Gu Fei said. It's not like you'll die if you're late, Thin Waist Dance scolded, but she had already quickened her pace with Gu Fei and Sword Demon. I say, why are you opening the lock? Don't you have a cause and result? Thin Waist Dance questioned on the way. So it was Gu Fei's turn to narrate. Why didn't you call me for such an interesting thing? Thin Waist Dance hit Gu Fei's head. For the top money warriors in the game, equipment, skills, and the like could be easily bought with money, but the faster they obtained them, the faster they would lose interest. If they wanted to maintain their interest in the game, they would need to find satisfaction in other aspects, especially things that couldn't be bought with money. Didn't I ask you to come out as soon as there's trouble? Gu Fei said. That's more like it. What do we do now? Thin Waist Dance asked. We just came out from there. It's very chaotic there, we should be able to sneak in again. Gu Fei said. Is it that courtyard you were talking about? Thin Waist Dance asked. Yes. Thin Waist Dance rarely joined in. Gu Fei and Sword Demon's high speed didn't drag them down, but instead made them drag them down. Along the way, Thin Waist Dance kept urging the two to hurry up, making Gu Fei not know whether to laugh or cry. Why are you running so far ahead? Do you know the way? The three quickly returned to the government compound's wall. Sword Demon purposely sneaked to the front door to take a look, then came back and said excitedly, it's quite a big fight. If we rush in now, no one will care about us. Go! Gu Fei swung his hand and threw a flying hook. Really? Gu Fei looked at Thin Waist Dance and saw her blank expression. He knew that he had to go through another lesson. Fortunately, Slender Waist Dancer wasn't a paper tiger that had only been armed with money and equipment. She had some real skills, so she was able to learn quickly. At the very least, she was better than the members of the Sky Nine. Finally, the three of them had successfully climbed over the wall. Looking into the courtyard, they sucked in a cold breath. The courtyard had already become a fiery battlefield. The three of them were people who had seen large-scale PvP battles before. However, the usual large-scale PvP battles were either in the vast wilderness or in the streets and alleys. At this moment, the limited space in the government compound was like a large arena. The sound of cursing, shouting, weapons clanging, and skills being used was louder and louder. The three of them didn't know which was which and couldn't tell which was better or worse. They could only say one word, so miserable. They didn't have time to look anymore. The three of them went around the wall to the backyard. Looking down, they complained endlessly. It turned out that the flames of war had already spread to this place, and it looked far more crowded and fiery than the front yard. Of course, Gu Fei and the others didn't know the inside story. At the beginning of the guild battle, they were attacking and defending at the front gate. Flowers in the Fog took the initiative to defend, but the situation was slightly disadvantageous for them. Simply put, they were in the open while the enemy was in the dark. The front gate of the courtyard was the boundary between the inside and the outside of the courtyard. The enemy outside the courtyard could hide in the fog by taking a few steps back, but the people inside the courtyard could be clearly seen by the enemy. The specific situation was that when the enemy's frontline combatants were heavily injured, they would quickly retreat into the fog and be out of danger. On the other hand, when the enemy's frontline combatants wanted to retreat in this situation, they would be caught by the enemy's long-range attackers and suffer heavy losses. Helpless, 3 Sighs of Flowing Maple decided to drag the battle back and let the enemy lose the fog as a barrier. But this time, their opponents had many guilds, and they had an overwhelming advantage in terms of numbers. Losing the defense of the front gate, the situation wasn't looking good for Flowers in the Fog. However, there was a big drawback to carrying out a large-scale PK battle in the front yard, and that was the rigid system NPC guards stubbornly interspersed. Some stood guard, some patrolled. No one knew what exactly happened in the courtyard for them to take action. With the interference of these guards, everyone was a little careful with their attacks. If they accidentally hit the guards, it would be a disaster. And some players with outstanding awareness even consciously lured their opponents' attacks to the guards, and the situation of the battle became extremely complicated. In this kind of situation, everyone subconsciously avoided the guards and fought in the space where there weren't any guards. Thus, as they swayed and swayed, they actually turned the backyard, which had almost no guards, into the main battlefield. Both sides wantonly attacked each other here. Chapter 487. Where do you think we should go? Slender Waist Dance said as she looked at the bustling scene beneath her feet. There. Gu Fei pointed to the woodshed in the corner. Because this was a very rare and high place in the courtyard, everyone was very concerned about this place, and the fight for it was extremely intense. Opportunity. Slender Waist Dance solemnly repeated the word that Gu Fei had emphasized to her before. Gu Fei's expression was tragic, and he didn't say anything. Should we wait? Sword Demon asked for their opinion. At this time, it was chaos below. Going down was tantamount to seeking death. No matter how skilled an expert was, they couldn't do anything. Sword Demon had a lot of experience in the game. In this situation, he concluded that if the 3 of them suddenly appeared without any characteristics of either side, they would definitely be seen as enemies by both sides, and their hatred would be greater than anyone else's. How long do we have to wait? Gu Fei muttered as he watched the battle. If individual challenges were fought back and forth in a few rounds, then team battles wouldn't end so quickly. Due to the cooperation, coordination, and recovery between each person, team battles had always been synonymous with persistence and patience. Whoever lost patience first and messed up the rhythm would be the first to collapse. The situation at first glance seemed to be a mess, but as an organized attack and defense, as well as an organized retreat of the guards to this backyard, everything was carried out in an orderly manner. It wasn't as chaotic as it seemed at first glance. An old veteran like Sword Demon, of course, quickly saw through the trick. He shook his head and sighed. I'm afraid it won't be too soon. Gu Fei looked at the time, and before he could speak, Slender Waist Dance had already shouted at him. If you log off again, I'll push you down. I came all the way here to help you with the mission. Try logging off. When Gu Fei heard this, he agreed. He felt a little bad for running away when he had specially invited a helper over. Gu Fei had always been a person of principle, but frankly speaking, he had already loosened his principle of going offline at midnight during the Traversing the Four Seas expedition. Gu Fei had already gotten used to it. Now that he thought about it, he might as well loosen it once more. Hence, he gave up on the idea of going offline first. Let me see if there's a chance. Gu Fei began to observe the situation below. Although the people below were very focused, the three of them didn't dare to be too arrogant and attract too much attention. At this time, they were all lying on the wall, and each stretched their head out to look. However, Gu Fei really wasn't good at team battles. He couldn't figure out anything even after a long time. Meanwhile, Slim Waist Dancer was a classic example of individual heroism. She didn't know how to write the word team at all. So, the two guys pretended to observe and study for a long time, but it was all in vain. In the end, it was Sword Ghost who figured it out. There's a chance. Sword Demon suddenly. What's wrong? The two quickly looked at him. Sword Demon pointed in the direction of the woodshed. That small woodshed can be regarded as a geographical advantage. With such a high point, long-range professions and priests can be more efficient. It has an immeasurable impact on the battle in that area. Then where's our chance? Slender Waist Dance wasn't a slow person. Look, now that the fight for this woodshed is over, their mages, archers, and priests have already occupied the roof. They've already taken the initiative in that area. If the opponent doesn't respond, they can only watch as their side is gradually nibbled away in this area. So, they must strengthen their offensive in this area. Before thinking of a way to seize the high point, they must also maintain the balance of this battle. Sword Demon's analysis was clear and logical. Slender Waist Dance listened blankly and asked again, "Where do you think our chance is?" Sword Demon helplessly explained further, when the battle is in a state of stalemate, if something unexpected happens to break the balance, the unprepared side will temporarily fall into chaos due to incompetence in command. We can take advantage of this moment. Slender Waist Dance had completely put on a broken expression. She looked at Gu Fei and said, "Is he speaking Chinese?" Gu Fei looked in the direction Sword Demon. Thinking, he nodded and said, "I understand what you mean. The high point of the woodshed is a very prominent advantage that side has. If it's destroyed in an instant, it'll be a very strong break of the balance, right?" Sword Demon. He nodded repeatedly. They, who are suppressing the opponent with this advantage, will definitely collapse in an instant. Slender Waist Dance also understood his intentions and asked, "What about the other side?" The side that has picked up the advantage won't collapse because they suddenly have the advantage, right? Sword Demon. He smiled. They won't, but they can't be more than happy that we're making a move. Do you think they'll think of making things difficult for us for a while? Even if they're looking at flowers through a fog. You're right. Gu Fei responded. Then let's make a move to break the balance. The position of the woodshed should be able to jump up. Sword Demon. He glanced at Slender Waist Dance. He didn't know if this girl had the courage to jump down from such a high place. Well, that's easy. Slender Waist Dance was indeed not an ordinary woman. Not only did she not know about teamwork, but she also didn't seem to know how to write fear. Will I fall to my death? Gu Fei asked. It's dangerous to land, but as long as I accurately jump to the roof, my HP will only be partially damaged, and I won't fall to my death. Sword Demon. His research on the game was really comprehensive. Only a madman like him would have such detailed research on how much HP could be lost by falling from a certain height. Although the addition of points and class might not be the same, Slender Waist Dance and Sword Demon. They were basically the same profession, so Sword Demon's judgment was also effective on her. As for Gu Fei, Sword Demon. To be cautious, it was better to use teleportation to land. Got it. Gu Fei nodded. Then, Qianli will go clear the monsters first, Slender Waist Dance and I will follow. Sword Demon. Said, "Clear monsters." Gu Fei. He looked at him. Sorry. Sword Demon. He knew that he had let the cat out of the bag. You go break the balance first. Gu Fei smiled and patted him. The three of them crouched on top of the wall and approached the woodshed. Fire will from the sky. Fall. When they were about to reach the woodshed, Gu-Fei suddenly extended his long sword and chanted a spell. He then turned around and said to the two, "I'm going." The two nodded. Gu-Fei slipped 2 more steps before his spell, which was so slow it was almost hair-raising, condensed in the air. The guys on the ground reacted quickly enough and immediately noticed that a spell had appeared on the roof of the woodshed. Because they had been paying attention to this phenomenon all the time, they had expected the enemy's long-range professions to use this method to attack them, so they had always been wary of the mages and archers in the area. They wanted to eliminate the hidden danger before it happened. Who would have thought that there would still be such a fish that slipped through the net and secretly cast a spell from a corner? They didn't know that this spell was cast by Gu-Fei, who had a higher level, and they didn't know how terrifying the power of this spell was. They just realized that it was just a fire will from the sky and faced it very calmly with a smile. But vaguely, the people on the roof seemed to hear a voice from above, too unrestrained. This was a slip of the tongue of Sword Demon and Slender Waist Dance at the same time. Originally, they shouldn't have spoken at this critical juncture of a surprise attack, but it was difficult for them to vent their feelings if they didn't say a word. After Gu-Fei summoned the fire wheel, he had already jumped out. However, the people below did not know that in order to seek cover, Gu-Fei had actually accurately hidden his body behind the dazzling fire wheel. Gu-Fei's fire wheel from the sky was both an attack and a cover for himself. This made Sword Demon and Slender Waist Dance admire his courage and subtlety. Part of the fire wheel landed on the ground, and the other part landed on the roof. The moment the flames touched their bodies, the players who were burned already felt that something was wrong. The HP of the players was like a water pipe that had been unscrewed. However, the HP of the players wasn't a water supply company. At most, it was a water tank that could be flushed into a toilet. With this kind of catharsis, it was already pretty good that they didn't die. Didn't they see a few of their brothers directly die? What was worse was that when the flames faded, there was actually an extra person on the roof. It was a mage in black clothes. He held a long sword in his hand and instantly swept up another wave of flames. How big could a small woodshed be? Gu-Fei turned around and double flame flash was enough to sweep through the area. Those who were about to die died on the spot, and those who didn't died because of the excessive loss of HP in a moment of panic, lost their footing and landed on the roof. Everyone looked at the sky like idiots, and then they saw 2 figures, one black and one red, suddenly shoot out from the top of the wall like human cannons. Without deviating, they landed on the roof. Sword Demon's prediction wasn't wrong at all. At this moment, those who were looking up at them like idiots were the ones who had the geographical advantage, and the ones who were originally at a disadvantage, because of this unexpected opportunity, were extremely happy. They didn't care about being idiotic at all, and under the strong attack, they instantly displayed a one-sided suppression. The details of the battle were no longer of any concern to Gu-Fei and the others. Gu-Fei nimbly jumped down from the woodshed, and immediately inserted the key in his hand into the keyhole, opening the door. "Quick!" Gu-Fei shouted and rushed in first. Sword Demon and Slender Waist Dance weren't any slower, but Slender Waist Dance hadn't been here before and didn't know where the door was. He was a little confused when he jumped down, but with Sword Demon pulling him, he didn't go in the wrong direction. The two squeezed into the door almost side by side. With a wave of his hand, Gu-Fei locked the door. Success! The 3 high-fived each other in celebration. "Let's see what's going on outside." Sword Demon skillfully ran towards the hole. He also wanted to see how much impact they would have on both sides after they broke the balance. "How is it?" Gu-Fei asked behind him. "Peng peng." 2 sounds rang out above their heads. It was obvious that someone had jumped onto the hut. The 3 of them felt their hearts clench, because this shabby woodshed looked so unreliable. Fortunately, the roof didn't leak. Sword Demon turned back and said, "Let's see which side is running up now." Immediately afterward, there were people stepping on the roof, and the dust fell toward the 3. The 3 of them couldn't avoid it. Slender Waist Dance was quite feminine when it came to cleanliness. She said angrily, how many people can stand on this roof? Are they done? They're probably fighting on the roof. Sword Demon looked up. Don't care about them, hurry up and unlock it. Gu Fei went over to move the firewood. Chapter 488. The pile of firewood was quickly emptied. Sword Demon said as he moved, no one moved it. I remember the shape we set it up. Gu Fei looked at him. We just left for a while, we can't be careless, Sword Demon said seriously. Okay. Unlock. Being serious was not a mistake. Gu Fei could not say anything else and could only signal Slender Waist Dance to start working. Slender Waist Dance, the locksmith who came from afar, showed the demeanor of a master. She waved her hand and pulled Gu Fei to the side. Move aside. Let me do it. It was as if she was not going to unlock the lock, but to defuse a time bomb. Gu Fei and Sword Demon respectfully stood to the left and right. They stretched their necks, ready to admire the godly skill of unlocking. In the end, the process was very simple. Slender Waist Dance put her hand into her pocket and took out a key that looked like it was used to open a can of luncheon meat. She inserted it into the iron lock that locked the cellar. With a click, the lock opened. Amazing! Gu Fei and Sword Demon gave her a thumbs up. They moved closer to see Slender Waist Dance's awesome key. What are you looking at? It's useless if you don't have any skills. Slender Waist Dance rolled her eyes at the two. Cough cough. The two coughed. Sword Demon stepped forward and struggled to pull up the cellar lid. Damn, another tunnel. Gu Fei glanced at it. He could see stairs and then a black mass. He immediately thought of the secret tunnel of Black Dragon Mountain. The shape was similar. What could it be? Slender Waist Dance was a little excited. Could it be that we can only enter the government building from here? Gu Fei thought. If that was the case, it would be very disappointing. Or should I say we can go out of the courtyard? Sword Demon suggested an even more disappointing idea. Let's go take a look, Slender Waist Dance said. Gu Fei touched his pocket and took out a torch. Sword Demon and Slim Waist Dance looked at him in surprise. Although this was a very common item, most people wouldn't have it. Local culture, Gu Fei quickly explained. This torch was an honor bestowed upon him after he joined the 9-man group. After the torch was lit, Gu Fei stuck his head into the cellar to take a look. It wasn't too deep, so he held onto the ladder and began to descend. Slim Waist Dance and Sword Demon followed behind him. The tunnel was humid and had a musty smell. The three of them covered their mouths and noses as they groped forward. It looks like a downhill slope, said the Sword Demon. Gu Fei and Slim Waist Dance mumbled something. The two of them did not want to let go and open their mouths. The road gradually widened and turned, as if it was a tunnel that spiraled downward. Finally, Gu Fei, who was walking at the very front, saw a flickering light. This was usually a sign of an exit, and this exit was so deep that it seemed to indicate that it was not a passage to the inside of the building or the outside of the courtyard. This place should be the location of some secret. Exit, it's an exit. Slim Waist Dance did not want to open her mouth to speak, so she switched to sending messages. She tugged on Gu Fei's clothes to make him pay attention. Gu Fei nodded his head furiously and quickened his pace. The three of them arrived at the exit in the blink of an eye and stepped in. In front of them was a spacious area. It was a secret room hidden deep underground. The scene in front of them caused the three of them to widen their eyes. They were speechless for a long time. What is this? The first one to speak was Gu Fei. He looked at the Sword Demon, the expert in online games. The Sword Demon's brows furrowed. He walked 2 circles and shook his head solemnly. I don't know. It's a bit disgusting. Slim Waist Dance spat out. In front of the three of them, there was a large object with a strange shape. It looked like a stone but not a stone, and it was hard to tell whether it was a crystal or not. The flickering light came from it. There seemed to be something flowing inside the object, and there were some unknown things attached to the surface. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was disgusting. Can I touch it? Gu Fei walked 2 steps forward. He did not feel anything strange with his body and wanted to reach out to try. I don't know. The two of them shook their heads. However, they used their gazes to encourage Gu Fei to reach out and try. The bold Gu Fei reached out and touched the object. It was hard and cold. Apart from that, there was nothing strange. He touched the strips of things again. They were dry and he still did not know what they were. The two of them saw that Gu Fei was fine after touching it, so they walked forward and studied it carefully. At that moment, Gu Fei retreated far away. He paid attention to the strips of things. The things crawled all over the object and then moved upwards. As Gu Fei looked at it, he suddenly realized something. This is a tree root. Tree root? The two of them were startled. They ran to where Gu Fei was standing. Look, this looks like a big tree growing on the ground. However, the roots underground are grabbing onto this thing, Gu Fei said. Such a big tree root, the tree should be very big, right? Slim Waist Dance said. There doesn't seem to be a big tree in the backyard, the sword demon said. Gu Fei continued to observe carefully. Following the veins of the tree roots, he found that after leaving the object, many of the tree roots twisted together and formed a knot. Then, they scattered and inserted themselves into the soil above. This might not be the roots of a tree. It might be the roots of many plants. They were tied together and then attached to this thing, Gu Fei said. Then what is this thing? The three of them continued to be puzzled. They looked and touched it, but the system did not give them any hints. Let's look around the room. Gu Fei said. It was not appropriate to call it a room. It was just a hole in the ground. The three of them looked around. Suddenly, Slim Waist Dance shouted, "Here!" Gu Fei and the sword demon hurriedly ran over. Slim Waist Dance was using her hand to wipe away the soil. A copper plate embedded in the wall gradually appeared in front of the three of them. The words on it were clear. The three of them hurriedly scanned a few lines and shouted in unison, "Water vapor absorber. Reduce the water vapor in the air." The sword demon repeated the key words. Does this mean that it clears the fog? Gu Fei said. In other words, the reason why there is no fog in the government compound is because of the existence of this thing. The sword demon said. That's right. There is actually no fog in this place. Slim Waist Dance had the same reaction as Gu Fei when he came here for the first time. She didn't react to the strangeness of the courtyard. Gu Fei didn't reply because he suddenly thought of the Fog Shadow Assassin's diary. He hurriedly took it out and flipped to the 3rd page. There was a short sentence, "What a big fog." In this kind of environment, it is very easy to attack and escape. It seems like this mission will be very successful. Was this actually a hint for the mission? Was it hinting to the players that in order to assassinate Giordano, they had to borrow the weather conditions of Xia Fog City? However, there was no fog in this compound. Therefore, there was an assassin who was sleeping with his feet pointing towards the water vapor absorber. It must be like this. Gu Fei felt that all of this was completely explainable. The Fog Shadow Assassin's diary was essentially a guide to completing this assassination mission. There was a hint hidden in it that in order to assassinate Giordano, they had to first destroy this absorber and change the weather environment. Gu Fei said his own inference. The sword demon and Slim Waist Dance both agreed that it was reasonable. Then, how do we destroy it? Gu Fei said. Attack it? The most simple inference. The problem is that we are all here. We don't know how to create the effect. Gu Fei said. Then I'll go up to the woodshed and keep an eye on it. You guys try it. The sword demon said. Gu Fei nodded. The sword demon left the cave and returned to the woodshed above. You can start. The sword demon said. Double flame flash, flash. Gu Fei didn't hesitate. He immediately used a super ultimate skill. The rock was just an inanimate object, so of course it hit. How is it? Gu Fei immediately asked the sword demon. It might take some time for the fog to form, right? Let's observe it. The sword demon replied. While the sword demon was observing it, Slim Waist Dance stabbed the thing countless times. Not even a small mark was left. Gu Fei faintly felt that attacking it directly might not be a reliable method. As expected, the sword demon sent a message saying that there was no change at all. These tree roots are connected to this thing all the way to the ground. What if we cut them all? Slim Waist Dance said. I'll try. Gu Fei said as he teleported to the top of the rock. He used his sword to chop at the knotted tree roots. In the end, he didn't know if it was because these tree roots had been entangled with the rock for too long. They were so hard that not even a scar was left. Gu Fei jumped down dejectedly. However, he heard Slim Waist Dance yell, Aya, look here. The content of the copper plate isn't over. Gu Fei hurriedly ran over. It turned out that it wasn't actually a copper plate. Instead, it was shaped like an open book. Gu Fei and the others only looked at the left half of the record and didn't notice the right half. After Gu Fei went up, Slim Waist Dance went to read the copper plate. In the end, she noticed something strange on the right half. The water vapor absorber can absorb the excess water vapor in the area within 1 minute and 22 seconds. The water vapor absorber will automatically start working after the moisture content in the air exceeds the standard for 3 minutes. Turn off the water vapor absorber. A large amount of water vapor will be released. Within 35 seconds, a super fog will form in the area. So there's a switch here. After reading the 3 sentences on the right copper plate while erasing it, Slim Waist Dance suddenly discovered that there was a switch installed on the second half of the copper plate. She excitedly raised her hand and was about to hit it. Wait! Gu Fei hurriedly grabbed her hand to stop her. Time! Gu Fei said, you have to calculate the time. This hint was also written in the Fog Shadow Assassin's diary. An assassin can't remember the time. Even a minute or a second wrong is enough to be fatal to us. This must be a hint for the time. Gu Fei thought. If he really didn't discover this half of the content and just tried to stop the water vapor absorber, then he would really die because of the time problem. This needs to be calculated. Gu Fei said. Calculated what? The fog doesn't affect the inside of the house. We have to make use of the fog to make our move when Giordano comes out to patrol. So, we have to calculate the time. Gu Fei said. Chapter 489. Calculate? Calculate what? Slender Waist Dancer asked. The route Giordano takes in the courtyard and the time it takes to turn off the water vapor absorber to reach the fog. That way, there will be enough time for the assassination. Can't you calculate this? Gu Fei said. Then hurry up and calculate. Slender Waist Dancer urged. These aren't my strong points. I'm not a math teacher. Gu Fei mumbled as he took out his notebook. He had already recorded Giordano's route, as well as a few locations that received relatively less attention. There was no doubt that these locations could be used now. These were all places where Giordano would be placed in an uninhabited environment after the fog rose. However, the water vapor absorber would automatically start working after 3 minutes. It would be completed in 1 minute and 22 seconds. This meant that Gu Fei only had 4 minutes and 22 seconds to kill the boss. No, it should be less than 4 minutes and 22 seconds. Gu Fei said. The absorption of water vapor should be a gradual process. It will be completely absorbed in 1 minute and 22 seconds. During this process, the fog will gradually thin and visibility will gradually increase. The enemy may discover us earlier. Even if we set the time to be less than 4 minutes, it's not too reliable. 4 minutes. If it was just a normal PK, it would be more than enough. However, the current opponent was likely to be a boss-level character. Since the beginning of the game, Gu Fei had challenged bosses, whether it was Suo 2 or the trash boss Adrian who had lost the ability to transform into a werewolf, or even the strongest assassin in the fog, none of them had been defeated in less than 4 minutes. Tenacious vitality was a common characteristic of all bosses. After all, no matter how high the attack or how overpowered the skills were, a boss that could be defeated with one poke was not a good boss. Defeat the boss in 4 minutes? Sword Demon, who had returned after learning of the new discovery, was shocked when he heard this conclusion. That's impossible. It's more likely that the whole team will be wiped out by the boss every 4 minutes. Although Sword Demon didn't have much experience in sieging a large-scale boss in the parallel world, at least he had experience. As long as it was an online game, many aspects of the design benchmarks were the same. A boss that could be killed in 4 minutes could only be a high-level player bullying a low-level small boss. As for a boss of a suitable level, it was too worthless to be killed so easily. As for Gu Fei's diary, it was dropped from the Misty Assassin, which was a higher-level boss. Even if Giordano wasn't a higher-level boss, it should at least be at the same level, right? 4 minutes was too ridiculous. No matter what, let's give it a try. Gu Fei suggested. No, this is an impossible mission. No matter how skilled you are, your damage output is just that. If the boss just stood there and didn't move, you wouldn't have been killed in 4 minutes. If it was really designed like this, then there might be some technique in assassinating this guy. Sword Demon was worthy of being an experienced player, his analysis was clear and logical. Makes sense. Could it be that he has some hidden weakness? Gu Fei said. Are there any clues in the diary? Sword Demon asked. Diary. Gu Fei hurriedly flipped through the diary and found all the places that were mentioned in the diary that were related to Giordano. When the diary first mentioned Giordano, the Misty Assassin was already on the verge of collapse. He kept recalling the past to keep his mind clear. As for this unfinished mission, perhaps because it could stimulate his fighting spirit, he mentioned it a lot. When Gu Fei looked through the content of Giordano, he finally realized that there were many hidden clues here. Everyone has a unique habit. When they repeat this habit, it is often when they let their guard down the most. Giordano, what is your habit? I will definitely find it. After Gu Fei noticed this sentence, he immediately shouted at the two people, Look, so this place already reminded us to start with Giordano's habit. Strange, why didn't I notice this sentence at first? Let down the guard when he's used to it. Could it be that this boss's defense is very weak when he's patrolling and he'll be killed in one hit? Slender Waist Dance guessed. It can't be that simple. Sword Demon said. What else? With the help of the light from the water vapor absorber, Gu Fei continued to recall while flipping through the diary. In his memory, there was information about Giordano that was beneficial to fighting, but he didn't know if it was because he was a bit impatient, but he couldn't remember it clearly. He could only keep flipping through the diary and stop to look at Giordano's words. Finally, Gu Fei found the information he needed. It's here. He shouted. What? The two people hurriedly asked. Giordano. Famous for his sword skills. Then do you know what it feels like to lose confidence? Ha, I will help you. I will let your body relive the painful memories, completely crush your confidence, and then ruthlessly erase you. Gu Fei read out this sentence. It was the sentence that he had been looking for all this time. This was already very late in the diary. It could be seen that the Misty Assassin had already collapsed to the point of hysteria. The assassin's calmness wasn't much left, and what emerged was a wave of madness. Famous for his sword skills. It really isn't easy to deal with. Is this what you're looking for? Slender Waist Dance said. No, It's this sentence. Let your body relive the painful memories. Gu Fei said, from this sentence, Giordano should have been seriously injured, perhaps this is his weakness. Seriously injured? What injury? Where is the injury? Is it written? Sword Demon said. No. Gu Fei shook his head. If this was written, then it would be a very obvious piece of information, and Gu Fei would have paid attention to it long ago. Doesn't that mean we don't know anything? Sword Demon said. This. Maybe when we fight, we can test it out. Gu Fei said. The two people's jaws dropped, that's possible. Of course, the premise is that the game is realistic enough. This setting of being seriously injured isn't just empty words. Gu Fei said. Or maybe your deduction is wrong. This is just the crazy words of the person who wrote the diary. Slender Waist Dance said. But other than this, I can't think of anything else. There's only so much about Giordano in the diary. You've seen it, what else is there? Gu Fei said. The two shook their heads. So, this is the only way. Gu Fei said. When will Giordano show up? Sword Demon asked. Gu Fei looked at his record, he left the room at 10:22 sharp. After 5 minutes and 57 seconds, which is 10:27:57, he will walk out of the main entrance of the government office and arrive at the first feasible assassination spot at 10:35:22. It's only 10:10 now, and there are still 25 minutes before the earliest opportunity to strike. But now the players outside are still in a mess. Will it be inconvenient? 25 minutes, their battle doesn't seem to be over. Sword Demon asked. The players don't have to worry too much. When I first came, I already noticed that there were fewer players fighting on Giordano's route in the front yard. Maybe the players in the fog were worried that PK here would be detrimental to Giordano and affect their mission, so they deliberately controlled it? Gu Fei speculated. In fact, Giordano's patrol route was through a few NPC areas in the front yard. Both sides deliberately avoided the NPC guards, and the relatively sparse area just happened to include Giordano's route. Let's not talk about making a move first. It's very difficult to rush to the assassination spot in this situation, right? Sword Demon said. Water vapor absorber. If we turn it off, it'll be easy to move around in the fog, right? When we make a move, we just need to time it and turn it off again. Gu Fei said. Repeatedly coming and going in the fog won't alert the NPC, right? Sword Demon said. Isn't that thinking too much? Is it that realistic? Gu Fei said. Hey, you still want to rely on realism to find the boss' old wounds. Sword Demon said. If that's the case, we have to think about it. Let's just pretend that this thing can only be used once. Now we have to think of another way to get close to the location. Gu Fei said. Hey, if you guys think about it this way, then after the fog rises, will that Giordano give up his original route and change to this small woodshed because of this abnormal situation? Slender Waist Dance said. Gu Fei was at a loss. Why do I feel like we've already analyzed the problem more and more complicated? Slender Waist Dance's words make sense. If we think about it this way, we can't not pay attention to this point. Sword Demon said. Okay, then you guys summarize what we should do. Gu Fei felt a bit of a headache. Everything will continue as before, but the people who stay behind to turn off the water vapor absorber must immediately leave the woodshed after turning it off. Be careful not to get killed by the NPC inside. Sword Demon said. As for Giordano, I don't think he'll immediately notice once the switch is turned off. It takes time for the fog to rise gradually. When he notices, he should be not far from the location you need. Then, you two just need to find an opportunity to pull the monster. Pull the monster. I say, Sword Demon, sometimes your words really ruin the atmosphere. Gu Fei said. Sorry, it's a habit. I'll pay attention next time. Sword Demon said. Why do you stay behind? I run faster, let me turn off the switch. Slender Waist Dance said. No, you should go with Chinli. Time is limited. In order to complete the mission, we need more damage. You're more suitable than me. Sword Demon said. Watch your words. Words. Oh, damage. Sorry. I'll pay attention next time. Okay, then it's settled. Gu Fei decided. Then how do we get close to the assassination site in the middle of a chaotic battle? This problem doesn't seem to have been solved. Slender Waist Dance asked. Since there's no other way, we can only kill our way through. Gu Fei cruelly wiped his sword. Slender Waist Dance was depressed. Why do I feel like the plan we came up with after thinking for a long time doesn't feel exquisite at all? Why not? What a meticulous plan. It's so exquisite that you can't ignore it for even a second. Be more spirited, if you die on the way out, you'll be a failure. Gu Fei said. I think you'll be the one to die. Slender Waist Dance cruelly pulled out her dagger. Chapter 490. Gu Fei and Dance left the cave one after the other and returned to the small woodshed. Gu Fei looked at the situation outside through the small hole. He turned around and wanted to say something to Dance, but he found that Dance had already pulled the door open. Fuck! Gu Fei shouted. Without further ado, he followed Dance and rushed out of the woodshed. Outside the door was a battlefield. Dance's eyes revealed a vicious glint. As soon as she jumped out, she was prepared to kill the person closest to her. However, Gu Fei was faster. He raised his hand and pulled Dance's arm down. Wait. Wait for what? There are two groups of people. Kill which one? Gu Fei said. Why? Look at their eyes. Gu Fei said. Under Gu Fei's reminder, Dance paid attention to the other party's eyes. Sure enough, she found the difference. When the man who was about to kill Gu Fei and Slender Waist Dance saw the two of them come out, he was pleasantly surprised. On the other hand, his opponent glared at Gu Fei and Slender Waist Dance as if they were his enemies. Hua! With a flash, the man's opponent was cut down by Gu Fei's sword. Everyone, do your best. Gu Fei raised his arms and shouted. Ao ao ao. Do your best. A group of people shouted along with Gu Fei. The man in front of him shouted even louder. His opponent, who had been fighting with him for a long time, was instantly killed by Gu Fei. What an amazing expert. Worship. Brother, which guild are you from? The man couldn't find a guild badge on Gu Fei's body, so he asked. We'll talk later. There's an enemy coming. Gu Fei swung his sword and helped the man block another attack. He then patted his shoulder. I'll leave this to you. That guy seemed to be shouldering some kind of important mission. He nodded heavily with an attitude that he wouldn't hesitate to die 1,000 times, turned around, and charged forward. This way. Gu Fei called Slim Waist Dance. He had already memorized the guild emblem of flower in the fog. As he walked, he greeted those who weren't flower in the fog warmly and slashed at those who were flower in the fog. Then, he patted someone behind him and said, I'll leave this place to you. Gu Fei and Slim Waist Dance, one black and one red, shuttled through the battlefield very smoothly. Slim Waist Dance did not even have a chance to attack. You're so treacherous. Slim Waist Dance looked at Gu Fei in disdain. Gu Fei ignored her and continued to walk while shouting, Come on, everyone. Just like that, he managed to walk from the back of the building to the front. This is the place. Gu Fei led the slender dancer to an empty spot on Giordano's patrol route. Of course, this empty space was only for NPCs. There were no guards within dozens of meters of this location. If there was fog, then Giordano would be hidden. However, there were still players fighting. Although they were trying their best to stay away from the NPC guards, there were still some sporadic fights in this small empty space. "Alright, you just stay here and wait," Gu Fei said to the slender waist dance. "What about you?" Slim waist dance asked. "This is too dangerous. I'll hide in the building," Gu Fei said. "Bastard, you mean you're going to leave a beauty in a dangerous place and run to a safe area? Do you have any humanity left?" Slim waist dance was furious. "You know stealth, I don't. I can enter the government office, you can't. So, you're safe here, I'm safe in the building. Everyone is safe," Gu Fei said. "Why can you enter the government office?" Slim waist dance asked. Gu Fei took out his wanted license and showed it to her. "How much?" Slim waist dance revealed her true self. She wanted something good as soon as she saw it. "I'm sorry, this can only be used by the owner," Gu Fei said. "How did you get it?" Slim waist dance asked. "Go in stealth first. We'll talk in private," Gu Fei said as he turned around and hurriedly walked towards the door. Everyone was focused on their opponents. Gu Fei tried his best to not attract any attention. No one really noticed him. In the end, he successfully entered the government office. He let out a long breath and sent a message to Slim Waist Dance. "How is it? Is it safe?" "It's safe." Slim Waist Dance went into stealth and crouched down in an open space. It was so safe that she could do whatever she wanted. "Tell me, how did you get that thing?" Slim Waist Dance asked. As Gu Fei walked towards the guard room, he briefly explained the requirements for the wanted license and its magical effects to Slim Waist Dance. "It's so troublesome." Slim Waist Dance felt a bit pained. She was used to getting equipment by throwing money at people. Last time, getting the wind-chasing boots had already challenged her patience. This time, getting the license required even more perseverance. Slim Waist Dance hesitated. "This isn't useful to you, right? It's not like you're doing a wanted quest," Gu Fei said. "It's useless, but I still want it," Slim Waist Dance said. Although she wasn't an idiot who treated money as waste paper, Slim Waist Dance, who didn't lack money, didn't live a frugal life. Although she didn't really need it, as long as it was rare, she would want it. This was a habit of hers. "Then go get it." Gu Fei didn't care. As he spoke, he pushed open the guard room. "Hi." As soon as he entered, someone on the sofa waved at Gu Fei. It was Drifting. "Waiting for me?" Gu Fei said. "Yeah." Drifting smiled. "What are you doing? Looking to die?" Gu Fei asked. "You're too arrogant. You should have panicked when you saw me waiting here calmly," Drifting said. "I am indeed very surprised. Although you know the purpose of my mission, you are still sitting here so casually. Do you think that the reputation of the 5 roaches is too heavy?" Gu Fei said as he unsheathed his sword. Wait, Drifting said. He knew that Gu Fei was fast. If he teleported here, Drifting didn't have a good chance. He had to admit that he was no match for Gu Fei in terms of strength. What? Gu Fei wasn't in a hurry. Gu Fei knew that not everyone could enter the government office, so even if Drifting had any traps, he and Lefty would be the ones to deal with them. Gu Fei didn't really care about the 3 of them, even if one of them was a top-notch expert like the 5 roaches. "Don't you think we don't need to be enemies anymore?" Drifting said. "Oh. We're all here for the quest." "The quest is more important," Drifting said. "Oh. Do you need my help with your quest?" Gu Fei said. "You're thinking too much." "Our quest is done," Drifting said. "Then why did you suddenly change your mind?" Gu Fei said. "Don't you already know about my original plan? That day, I dealt with the people who came in so that we could go in and out freely. Now that we've achieved our goal, it's over. Why are we still enemies? Drifting said. That's because I can't stand the way you do things. Gu Fei sighed. Really? Then I'm sorry. I apologize, Drifting said. Gu Fei was surprised. Drifting's sudden change of attitude was a bit strange. Was he really afraid of him? He thought about it and said, what about the guild? Guild? I've done everything I can do for the guild. Do you want me to die? I've only joined the guild for a few days. I don't have that awareness, Drifting said with a smile. Gu Fei finally understood. It seemed that Drifting really didn't want to be enemies with him. This guy's way of doing things was really insidious and smooth. His quest was done, and the guild didn't know about the people who caused trouble behind his back. If he reconciled with Gu Fei, nothing would happen. He didn't offend anyone. His quest was done, and he still had a lot of friends. You should have brought Slim Waist Dance. Let her see what's called treachery, Gu Fei said. Right, I saw Slim Waist Dance. You brought such a strong person here. It seems that you're determined to succeed this time. Drifting acted as if he didn't hear Gu Fei say he was treacherous. Gu Fei continued to look at Drifting. As an educator, I won't be happy if I don't correct my mistakes. What educator? Drifting was confused. And you're an adult. I think we can skip the education part. You should just bear the consequences. Gu Fei said. Drifting's expression changed. He knew that his negotiation with Gu Fei had failed. He realized that he had misjudged Gu Fei. He thought that a strong person like Gu Fei would be amenable to persuasion but not coercion. He didn't expect this guy to be so stubborn. He wasn't afraid of fighting and killing, but now that he had taken the initiative to reconcile, he was ignored. I hope you won't take it to heart. I'll punish you, and we'll still be friends, Gu Fei said. Drifting had given up on the comfortable sofa and stood up. His staff was already in front of his chest, but he was panicking. What kind of joke is this? I'm not the boss if I fight this guy one-on-one, Ice Shadow. It's useless. This guy can find me directly. Falling Clothes Red Lotus. The space in the room was like this. Falling Clothes Red Lotus would attack all the guards. It might not be able to kill Gu Fei instantly, but he would definitely be killed by the guards. Since there was no other way, he could only take a gamble and see if he could die together with Gu Fei. He couldn't die in vain, right? Drifting waved his staff and was about to chant. Suddenly, Gu Fei was in front of him. Teleportation. Drifting had expected this. Is this guy going to use the same trick as last time? Since this was the case, he didn't care about his manners anymore. Seeing Gu Fei raise his arm and swing it at his mouth, Drifting made up his mind. Bite. Drifting nimbly stretched his mouth forward and closed his teeth. Crack. Drifting found that there was an apple in his mouth. Woo. Because Gu Fei firmly pushed him forward, Drifting still couldn't speak. He was crying in his heart. Shameless. Didn't you tell me if you wanted to use a prop? For the sake of our friendship, I won't kill you directly. I'll let you try your luck. As he spoke, Gu Fei pushed the apple with his right hand and pushed Drifting back. He pushed open the window with his left hand and tripped Drifting. The apple fell out of Drifting's mouth, but he didn't have time to chant. He could only shout, "What do you want to do?" before he was sent out of the window by Gu Fei. The apple vinegar is falling. Gu Fei shouted at the players on the third floor, "You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure."